Chapter 447. Boom! Not long after Faerun flew into the depths of the ancestral mausoleum, a loud rumble came from the sky not far away. It was as if thunder had suddenly changed. What is that? Faerun's eyes narrowed, and in the next moment, he stopped and looked at the sky not far away. Huff, huff, huff! Boom! On the horizon, a huge sandstorm tornado suddenly appeared. It was hundreds of feet high and filled with sand and gravel. It was as if it was going to destroy the world. And right in front of the sandstorm tornado, there were many figures of cultivators who seemed to be fleeing. Everyone had a look of horror on their faces, and the soles of their feet were oiled. They were afraid that they would be sucked into the sandstorm tornado behind them and die an unnatural death. Damn it! I can't believe we encountered a sandstorm tornado here. How unlucky! Run. This sandstorm tornado is very strange. Previously, even an LV-10 Martial Master expert could not resist it and was swallowed by it. If we are caught in the sandstorm tornado, we will definitely lose our lives. Among the fleeing warriors, there were experts from the 5 major tribes. At the same time, there were also some rogue cultivators from the outside world. They came from all walks of life and had complicated backgrounds. Sandstorm tornado. The depths of the ancestral mausoleum are indeed dangerous. Faerun's ears moved slightly. The conversation of these fleeing warriors naturally fell into his ears. With his current primary power cultivation, even if he was dozens of miles away, not to mention sound, even the slightest movement of the wind and grass could not be hidden from him. As for the sandstorm tornado, it was a natural phenomenon with amazing destructive power. Just like the sandstorm tornado in front of everyone, its scale was something that even Faerun had never seen before. It was hundreds of feet high and was very shocking. Even an LV-10 Martial Master expert could not resist it head-on. If he was not careful, he would be swallowed and killed. Moreover, Faerun also found that the sandstorm tornado that was chasing after everyone seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Everywhere it went, besides leaving a mess, it was also absorbing the sand and gravel on the ground. Its destructive power was getting more and more amazing. A middle-aged man in a gray robe was unfortunately sucked into the sandstorm tornado. Then, he let out a blood-curdling scream as his entire body was strangled into a pool of blood. Not even a corpse was left behind. This gray-robed middle-aged man had a cultivation of level 8 Martial Master realm, and his strength was not bad. However, in the face of the gigantic sandstorm tornado that covered the sky and the earth, it still appeared extremely small. Without any ability to resist, it was instantly devoured and killed. Run! We'll lose our lives if we're too slow. Seeing this scene, the faces of the surrounding martial warriors changed drastically. Their expressions became more and more frightened. Immediately, their speed increased a little, as if they wished they could grow 2 more legs and at the same time get rid of the deadly pursuit of the sandstorm tornado behind them. Why is the destructive power and scale of this sandstorm tornado getting stronger and stronger? At this moment, facing the approaching sandstorm tornado, Faerun was also surprised. In his opinion, even if it was a natural phenomenon, it was impossible for sandstorms and tornadoes to increase their power without limit. There must be something fishy going on. Something strange. At that moment, Faerun was certain of the opinion in his heart. Brat, get out of the way! Suddenly, a fleeing martial warrior rushed in front of Faerun in an instant. His face was flushed red as he shouted angrily. This martial warrior was dressed in a beast robe and had a feather ornament on his head. His cultivation of origin power had also reached level 7 Martial Master realm. He seemed to be from the 5 major tribes. Seeing that Faerun was blocking his escape route, this martial warrior naturally could not remain calm. Swoosh! With a flash of his body, Faerun retreated and opened up a path for them. I have the protection of the Dharma Golden Buddha body and the Immortal Refining Cauldron in my hand. A mere sandstorm tornado can't cause any trouble. Behind him, the sandstorm tornado instantly attacked with great momentum. However, Faerun had no intention of escaping. His eyes revealed a calm expression. "You're courting death." Seeing that Fei Run had retreated to the side and stopped running at the same time, this martial warrior's eyes narrowed slightly. Then, he snorted coldly as if he thought that Fei Run was already a dead man. After all, in his opinion, Fei Rin's origin power cultivation was only at level 5 Martial Master Realm. The destructive power and power of the Sandstorm Tornado in front of him were astonishing. Even a level 10 Martial Master Realm expert could be swallowed and killed, let alone Fei Run, who was only at level 5 Martial Master Realm. Boom! With a whistling sound, the Sandstorm Tornado swallowed a few martial warriors who did not have time to escape and turned them into blood. Ha ha ha! If I kill a few more, my Absorbing Star's great skill will be able to break through to the complete realm. In the center of the Sandstorm Tornado, under the cover of layers of sand and gravel, a red figure appeared strangely. His face was ruthless and ruthless. At this moment, if anyone saw it, they would be surprised to find that this Sandstorm Tornado was not a natural phenomenon, but was summoned by someone. The red figure was a bald man in a red robe. Not only was his appearance very ugly, but he also had a pair of cross-eyed eyes. He could be considered an ugly man. The only highlight of the bald man in the red robe was his origin power cultivation. It was still SOSO and had already reached the half-step martial spirit realm. His strength was similar to that of the great elder of the Shichuo tribe, Zhang Han. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the next moment, Fei Rin's figure was also swallowed by the huge Sandstorm Tornado. However, a second before he was swallowed, he used the Dharma Golden Buddha body. At the same time, he used the power of the Immortal Refining Cauldron to devour the remaining power of the violent force and transform it into pure origin power to increase his cultivation. To others, this Sandstorm Tornado might be a life-threatening disaster. However, to Fei Run, this was an opportunity. Not only was he not injured after being swept into the Sandstorm Tornado, his origin power cultivation had also increased by a little. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the middle of the Sandstorm Tornado, Fei Run was surrounded by a crimson golden light. The Golden Buddha Phantom behind him was also emitting a powerful aura, isolating the sand and gravel that constantly attacked him. It was as if he was walking on flat ground. Half-step martial spirit realm, it should be him. Looking up at the sky, it was the center of the Sandstorm Tornado. Although Fei Rin could not find the specific location of the person behind the scenes, he could sense the origin power aura fluctuation on the other party's body. It was not weak and had reached the half-step martial spirit realm. Swoosh! Suddenly, a sky-blue dazzling light cut through the sky and headed straight for the roaring Sandstorm Tornado. Rumble! In the next moment, the sky-blue dazzling light fiercely collided with the Sandstorm Tornado. Then, a majestic origin power impact exploded, causing the surrounding sand to fly and the sky to change color. What? Facing the sudden change, the bald man in the red robe, who was in the center of the Sandstorm Tornado, had a slight change in expression. Just a moment ago, he also sensed that he had completely lost control of the Sandstorm Tornado. It seemed that there was an external force interfering. Rumble, accompanied by a deafening roar, the sky-blue dazzling light and the remnant Yuan power also gradually dissipated. At the same time, the originally howling and devastating Sandstorm Tornado also came to a stop, after which it gradually disappeared as if it had never existed. The Sandstorm Tornado disappeared. How is that possible? Could it be that an expert did it? Seeing the originally huge and powerful Sandstorm Tornado suddenly collapse and disappear without a trace in the next moment, all the surviving cultivators present were dumbfounded and had strange expressions on their faces, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. After all, the power of the Sandstorm Tornado was too terrifying. It had already swallowed and killed many warriors along the way, including many level 10 Martial Master experts. Therefore, in the eyes of the crowd, to be able to easily destroy the Sandstorm Tornado, the person who did it must be very powerful. Chapter 448. What? As the sandstorm dissipated, Fei Ren's face was filled with shock. Although the person controlling the sandstorm tornado was only at the half-step to martial spirit realm, it was not easy to destroy the sandstorm tornado. The person who did it was at least at LV1 martial spirit realm. Looks like I don't need to do anything. Narrowing his eyes, Fei Ren retracted his Dharma golden Buddha body and landed on the ground. He knew very well that the power of the sky blue light from before was comparable to that of a Tier 7 martial art. Although the sandstorm tornado had wreaked havoc and killed many warriors, there were still some warriors who survived. Most of them were at LV6 martial master realm and above. As for the weaker ones, they had been swallowed up by the sandstorm tornado. Not even their corpses were left behind. Who are you? How dare you ruin my plans? At this time, a rough voice came from the sky. Then, a red figure appeared. It was the bald man in the red robe. That is, could it be that he was the one who caused the sandstorm tornado? Half-step to martial spirit realm. This person is quite strong. As the voice fell, the surviving warriors all looked up at the sky. They had different expressions when they saw the angry bald man in the red robe. The people present were not fools. The bald man in the red robe was at the center of the eye of the sandstorm tornado. At the same time, he was not damaged at all. Obviously, he was related to the sandstorm tornado. There was a high probability that he was the one who caused it. Moreover, among the people present, the highest cultivation was only at LV10 martial master realm. Similarly, they were no match for the bald man in the red robe. The cultivation of the bald man in the red robe had reached the half-step to martial spirit realm. Although the difference between the half-step to martial spirit realm and LV10 martial master realm was only half a realm, the difference in strength was huge. Bald man, I didn't expect you to be so arrogant. Just as everyone was extremely shocked, a long laugh slowly came from the horizon not far away, and the tone was mocking. The next moment, a young man in a Taoist robe with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes arrived with the wind. The young man's body was surrounded by sky-blue energy like a meteor. His entire body was dignified, and a sage-like aura arose spontaneously. It seemed that his origin was extraordinary, and it was daunting. Another half-step to martial spirit realm. One of the martial artists in the crowd exclaimed. Like the bald man in the red robe, the young man in the Taoist robe who had suddenly appeared in front of him was also a half-step to martial spirit realm. Moreover, his aura seemed to be stronger than the bald man in the red robe. He was vaguely suppressing the bald man in the red robe in the sky. The two half-step to martial spirit realm experts were only in the ancestral mausoleum. Normally, they would not have the chance to see so many experts. So this is the person who saved us. A female warrior looked up at the young man in a Taoist robe in the sky with her beautiful eyes. This young man is really handsome. As her voice fell, another beautiful middle-aged woman who was at level 7 martial master sighed with emotion. Her eyes revealed a trace of seduction. Not to mention the other party's strength. The young man in the Taoist robe was also very handsome and delicate. At first glance, one could tell that he was a disciple of a big sect. Moreover, the young man in the Taoist robe had a dignified appearance and an extraordinary temperament that was not something an ordinary person could possess. This guy is really in the limelight. Looking at the sky, Fei Ren also landed in the crowd. However, he was very low-key and did not choose to make a move. Instead, he quietly looked at the young man in the Taoist robe and the bald man in the red robe who were confronting each other in the sky. In his opinion, these two people were both at the half-step to martial spirit realm. If there were no accidents, their strength should be equal. Moreover, the person who had destroyed the sandstorm tornado was the young man in the Taoist robe. This bastard is also at the half-step to martial spirit realm. Damn it! Looking at the young man in the Taoist robe, not far in the sky, the bald man in the red robe clenched his teeth and his face was full of resentment. The cultivation method he cultivated was called the Absorbing Star's Great Skill. It was an authentic level 6 cultivation method that could be strengthened by devouring the blood essence of living creatures. However, if he wanted to cultivate it to the complete realm, he would need to devour a large amount of high-quality blood essence. For the bald man in the red robe, the blood essence of ordinary demonic beasts was obviously not enough to satisfy his needs. As for demonic beasts above the earth rank, he was no match for them. At the moment, he could only kill human warriors in order to break through the shackles of his cultivation method. Previously, by controlling the sandstorm tornado, the bald man in the red robe had absorbed the blood essence of dozens of warriors. Among them, there was no lack of level 10 martial master experts. He was only one step away from breaking through to the complete realm. However, he had never expected that at the last moment of the absorbing star's great skills breakthrough, it would be ruined by the young man in the Taoist robe. Apparently, the other party had seen the weakness of the sandstorm tornado and attacked the weak center of the tornado, thus breaking the sandstorm tornado. Bald man, you don't seem to be convinced? The young man in the Taoist robe glanced at everyone present. In the next moment, he looked at the bald man in the red robe again and said lightly in a casual tone, "Pretty boy, how dare you ruin my plan? You'll lose your life." Squinting his eyes, the bald man in the red robe's face flashed with boundless killing intent. At the same time, he secretly took out a high-grade vitality recovery elixir from his spiritual ring and swallowed it. In order to cast the sandstorm tornado, he had already used more than half of his vitality. Since the young man in the Taoist robe had the same cultivation as him, he naturally would not underestimate him. "Oh, then you can try." In the face of the bald man in the red robe's threat, the young man in the Taoist robe only grinned. He was still arrogant and did not take the other party seriously. This guy should not be from the great Ming Empire. Perhaps he is from another region. On the other side, Farron also touched his chin and looked at the young man in the Taoist robe with a flash of thought in his eyes. The other party was young and looked to be in his early 20s. However, he already had the cultivation of half-step to martial spirit realm. Farron had never heard of such a martial arts genius in the Great Ming Empire or Danyang region. Moreover, Farron felt a sense of threat from the other party. He had never felt this way even when facing the inner disciple, Zhu Wuchang. Therefore, Farron was certain that the young man in the Taoist robe in front of him was not an ordinary person. Moreover, it was very likely that he was more powerful than any of the geniuses he had met before. One arrogant young man. He was the one who destroyed the terrifying sandstorm tornado with a single blow. He is so young and already has the vitality cultivation of half-step to martial spirit realm. This guy must be from a big sect or clan in the outside world. Is this the legendary martial arts genius? On the ground below, looking at the young man in the Taoist robe and the bald man in the red robe, the surviving martial artists were also discussing spiritedly. In the sky, "Pretty boy, I don't care who you are. Die." Seeing that the young man in the Taoist robe was still calm, the bald man in the red robe could no longer suppress his anger. He immediately rushed toward the young man in the Taoist robe. At the same time, waves of red vitality flames rolled up as if the heavenly fire had descended. Good timing. As the biting cold attack came, the young man in the Taoist robe also laughed. A large amount of sky-blue vitality force gushed out from his body and then swept out. Brilliant ice crystals appeared, and even the surrounding temperature dropped a little. It was as if the world was frozen and everything was cold. Raging fire and ice were incompatible like fire and water. At the same time, looking at the young man in the Taoist robe and the bald man in the red robe who were fighting fiercely in the sky, everyone present was shocked. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. After all, they could not interfere in a battle of this level. Chapter 449. The red-robed bald man and the Taoist-robed young man in the sky were both at the half-step to martial spirit realm. No one could tell who would win. Boom! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the endless red flames met the gorgeous ice crystals head-on. It was like a raging inferno. However, in the next moment, the red flames dissipated and turned into nothingness. A large number of gorgeous ice crystals were still emitting a chilling aura. It was like an indestructible ice barrier that blocked the red-robed bald man's attack. In the battle between ice and fire, the Taoist-robed young man clearly had the upper hand. What? Seeing that his attack was blocked, the red-robed bald man's expression changed drastically. It was as if he had seen something unbelievable. After all, he was at the half-step to martial spirit realm, similar to the Taoist-robed young man. In the red-robed bald man's opinion, although the Taoist-robed young man was slightly stronger than him, their strength should not be too far apart. But now, it seemed that he was gravely mistaken. The Taoist-robed young man's strength was far superior to his. I've met a tough opponent. At that moment, the red-robed bald man's heart revealed a hint of retreating. As the saying goes, where there's life, there's hope. As a half-step to martial spirit realm expert, he naturally cherished his life more than anyone else. He did not want to die in vain. Your strength is too weak. On the other side of the sky, the ice crystals gradually dissipated. The Taoist-robed young man stood with his hands behind his back, looking calm. Previously, he had only used 50% of his strength, but it was enough to defeat the red-robed bald man opposite him. The red-robed bald man could not even break through his ice crystal defense. This guy's strength is so strong. On the other side, Fei Ren's face was also solemn. He could vaguely sense that the Taoist-robed young man in the sky had not used his full strength. Moreover, he had a playful attitude from the beginning. Otherwise, the red-robed bald man opposite him would have died in less than 3 rounds. There was no way he could have dragged on until now. I wonder if my Dharma Golden Buddha body can break through this guy's ice crystal defense. Facing such a powerful genius, Fei Ren's heart was filled with fighting spirit. The Taoist-robed young man in the sky definitely had the strength to be his opponent. Strange, this gigolo's strength is too strange. My absorbing star's great skill has yet to reach the perfect realm. I'm no match for this guy. In the face of the aggressive young man in the Taoist robe, the bald man in the red robe had an uncertain expression on his face. He frowned as if he was thinking of a way out. After all, he was no match for the Taoist robe youth in a head-on confrontation. If he continued to fight, he might lose his life. Good chance. The red-robed bald man's eyelids twitched when he saw that the Taoist-robed young man didn't attack again. In the next moment, he took out a brown-yellow spiritual talisman from his spiritual ring. Sandstorm Profound Talisman. With a roar, the bald man in the red robe also poured yuan power into the spirit talisman in his hand. Then, he muttered something under his breath, as if he was performing some kind of spell. What is this guy trying to do now? The young man in the Taoist robe squinted his eyes when he saw the bald man's actions. However, he was not in a hurry to make a move. It was as if the bald man was already a turtle in a jar in his eyes. It was impossible for him to escape, even if he had wings. Chua! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With the destruction of the spiritual talisman, a huge tornado suddenly formed in the next moment. It constantly absorbed the surrounding sand and gravel. In just a few breaths, it grew into a sandstorm tornado that was dozens of feet tall. Its power was not much weaker than before. Damn it, it's coming again. The sudden change caused everyone's expression to change slightly. After all, the destructive power of the previous sandstorm tornado were still vivid in their minds. Moreover, among all the cultivators present, except for Fei Ren and the young man in the Taoist robe, almost no one could escape from the sandstorm. As long as they were sucked into the sandstorm, only death awaited them. Not even their bones would remain. It turns out that the sandstorm tornado was formed with the help of the spiritual talisman. In the face of a new sandstorm tornado in front of him, Fei Ren did not hesitate. A large amount of golden yuan power appeared and turned into a barrier at the same time, isolating the remaining power of the sandstorm tornado. To be able to create a sandstorm tornado that was enough to kill a level 10 martial master expert, the quality of the sandstorm Xian talisman in the red robe was not low. It was not inferior to some high-grade spiritual talismans. It was the top of the middle-grade spiritual talismans. Just this quasi-high-grade spiritual talisman alone was worth at least 500,000 low-grade primordial stones in the market. However, in order to escape, the bald man in the red robe did not hesitate to throw it out. It was enough to show that the other party was ruthless. Boom! In an instant, the sandstorm tornado also swept toward the crowd. A quasi-high-grade spiritual talisman? In the face of the sandstorm tornado, the young man in the Taoist robe raised his eyebrows slightly. The next moment, he smiled faintly and said, "Your trump card is not bad, but it is useless against me infinite Ice Emperor body." His eyes narrowed, and in the next moment, the young man in a Taoist robe also shouted out. Boundless sky bluingly gushed out from his dantian, and then wrapped around his body endlessly like layers of ice crystals. At the same time, his entire aura skyrocketed by more than a few times, and a supreme sense of majesty arose spontaneously. At this time, the young man in the Taoist robe had deep eyes and turned into an icy blue. At the same time, his robe was stained with a little bit of gorgeous ice crystals. Compared to before, he seemed to be a different person. He was like the legendary Ice Emperor, which was daunting. Looking at the young man in the Taoist robe in the sky, whose temperament had changed greatly, Fei Ren's face also froze and then became extremely shocked. Innate dominating body. The majestic aura of the other party was the same as his Dharma Golden Buddha body, and it seemed to be a little stronger. It was the rare innate dominating body. For martial artists, the power of the innate dominating body was generally stronger than the acquired dominating body. The acquired dominating body had no room for growth, but the innate dominating body could be strengthened with a martial artist's own strength. In addition, every martial artist who could condense the innate dominating body was a top genius in the world. I didn't expect this guy to condense the innate dominating body. Looking at the young man in the Taoist robe in the sky, who was like the Ice Emperor, Fei Ren's face became a little dignified. With the strength of the young man in the Taoist robe in front of him, even if he attacked with all his strength, he dared not say that he could defeat the other party. Icebound world. The power of the innate dominating body was released without reservation. In the next moment, the young man in the Taoist robe stretched out his left hand and grasped the void fiercely. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A large number of ice crystals shot out, bringing a burst of extreme coldness wherever they went, and everything withered. Boom! In the next moment, the originally destructive sandstorm tornado suddenly collapsed and was covered by countless gorgeous sky blue ice crystals. After a series of rumbling sounds, it dissipated again and turned into a cloud of dust. With the cultivation of a half-step to martial spirit realm and the power of the innate dominating body, the bald man in the red robe could not compete with a mere quasi-advanced spiritual talisman. Chapter 450. Innate dominating body. What kind of monster is this gigolo? In the sky, the red-robed bald man, who had not escaped for long, was horrified when he saw his sandstorm tornado being destroyed by a single blow. Although he was a half-step to martial spirit realm expert, a quasi-advanced spiritual talisman was very expensive. You can't escape. After destroying the sandstorm tornado with a single blow, the Taoist-robed young man rushed out like a blue aurora and caught up with the red-robed bald man in a few breaths. Go to hell. The red-robed bald man's face turned red when he saw the Taoist-robed young man blocking his path of retreat. Then the yuan power around his body surged. He raised his hand and blasted out a red, flaming palm strike. It was aimed directly at the opponent's chest. The attack was biting cold. Previously, his opponent had destroyed a sandstorm Xian talisman. Now he had wasted 2 quasi-advanced spiritual talismans, which was equivalent to 1,000,000 low-grade primordial stones. However, after paying such a huge price, he still could not escape. The red-robed bald man was furious and wanted to tear the Taoist-robed young man into pieces. Final struggle. In the face of the red-robed bald man's dying counterattack, the Taoist-robed young man sneered and blasted out a palm attack. Swoosh! A large number of gorgeous ice crystals burst out, causing the surrounding temperature to drop to the extreme. The cold air dissipated as if they had fallen into an extremely cold ice cave. After displaying the innate dominating body, the young man in the Taoist robe not only had his overall strength greatly increased, but his origin energy attacks were also accompanied by wisps of icy chi. The icy chi was also very powerful. If a weak warrior accidentally touched it, he would be instantly turned into an ice sculpture. Boom! Rumble. As the fist and palm collided, two different types of yuan power also exploded, emitting a deafening loud sound. A boundless aura also scattered in all directions in the sky, lingering for a long time, causing one's heart to palpitate. A large number of flaming palm attacks collapsed in the next moment, as if a raging fire had met the ocean and was swallowed and melted. At the same time, the entire sky was covered with a gorgeous sky blue color, like ice and snow in winter, which was somewhat magical. So beautiful. On the ground, a female warrior looked a little dazed, as if she was attracted by the ice and snow scene in front of her. Bang! At this time, the ice and snow gradually dissipated, and a red figure also fell from the sky. In the end, it fiercely fell to the ground, leaving behind a deep pit. It was a mess. The red figure's aura was extremely weak, and his entire body was covered with injuries. There was even a bloody hole in his chest, and he looked extremely miserable. It was the red-robed bald man from before. At first, I thought you had some strength. Now, it seems like it seems that the people from the 5 major tribes are more fun, and they have more treasures on them. Landing on the ground, the young man in the Taoist robe grinned as he looked at the bald man in the red robe who was lying in the deep pit. He was barely breathing and could not move at all. Then, he took the man's spirit ring and said in a mocking tone, "You, Pucci." The scarlet-robed bald man's face turned red as he spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, his head tilted to the side and he stopped breathing. It seemed that he had been angered to death by the other party because of the anger in his heart that affected the injuries all over his body. This person is too strong. Seeing the young man in a Taoist robe kill the scarlet-robed bald man who was half a step to martial spirit realm, the crowd looked at each other in dismay. Some of them swallowed hard, as if they were too shocked to speak. Have you guys seen enough? At this moment, after dealing with the scarlet-robed bald man, the young man in the Taoist robe turned around and looked at everyone present. If you've seen enough, then obediently hand over all your spirit rings and treasures. Otherwise, I won't hold back. The young man in the Taoist robe smiled, and a trace of cunning appeared on his handsome face. Just as Fei Ren had guessed, he was not from the great Ming dynasty, nor was he a native martial artist of the eastern continent. He was from a northern continent, just like the 4th captain of the dragon sect, Guan Sheng. As for this trip to the ancestral mausoleum, the young man in the Taoist robe had come to collect all kinds of treasures in the world. As for the purpose of collecting treasures, it had something to do with the ancient sect behind him. The young man in the Taoist robe was called Mo Chuandao, and he was a disciple of the Archaic Mysteries sect, an ancient sect in the northern continent. The Archaic Mysteries sect was a 3rd-grade sect with a strong foundation. However, unlike the other 3rd-grade sects, the Archaic Mysteries sect had strict criteria for selecting disciples. Every disciple of the Archaic Mysteries sect was a genius among geniuses. Other than that, the disciples of the Archaic Mysteries sect had a special mission, which was to search for treasures all over the continent and bring them back to the sect. As for the reason, even Mo Chuandao himself did not know. He was just following orders. You were the one who sacrificed yourself to help us kill that bastard. How is it now? Faced with Mo Chuandao's actions, a level 7 martial master among the crowd cupped his hands and spoke with a doubtful tone. In his opinion, since Mo Chuandao had saved them, he should not be an evil cultivator. He would not kill and rob like the scarlet-robed bald man. Cut the crap. Hurry up if you don't want to die. I'm very busy. However, to the surprise of the rogue cultivator, Mo Chuandao seemed to have a hooligan nature as he snorted coldly. At the same time, a majestic sky-blue primary force surged out from his body, and he looked like he would attack at any moment. After all, the disciples of the Archaic Mysteries sect had a mission to collect various treasures and bring them back to the Archaic Mysteries sect. This mission was set by the sect leader of the Archaic Mysteries sect, and no one was allowed to go against it. Otherwise, their cultivation would be crippled, and they might even be expelled from the sect. Unlucky. A few days ago, I finally managed to collect a rare 6th-grade medicinal herb, the fruitless jade spiritual flower in the ancestral tomb. After consuming this medicinal herb, it can gather chi and focus, and increase the effectiveness of one's cultivation. Now, I have to give it away. My heart hurts. What's the use of saying so much? Even if all of us attack together, I'm afraid we won't be able to defeat this kid. This 5th-grade spirit treasure, the Heaven Star Spear, was taken from a corpse in a graveyard. I thought I could sell it for a good price. Damn it, now it's all gone. Although the crowd was dissatisfied, they were faced with the powerful Mo Chuandao, and the scene of the red-robed, bald man's tragic death was still vivid in their minds. They immediately handed over the spirit rings and treasures in their hands, not daring to hold anything back. After all, if they accidentally offended Mo Chuandao, their lives would be in danger. If Mo Chuandao wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as squashing an ant. Escape from the pack of wolves and entered the tiger's den. That's probably what it means. Not far away, Feiren rubbed his nose. The development of the situation was beyond his expectations as well. At first, he thought that Mo Chuandao was saving them out of kindness. However, he did not expect Mo Chuandao to have the same goal as the red-robed bald man, which was to plunder treasures. The only difference was that Mo Chuandao did not start a massacre like the red-robed bald man. Moreover, from the looks of it, Feiren would eventually be robbed by Mo Chuandao. Chapter 451. Kid, you two, hand over the spiritual rings and treasures in your hands, and I can spare your life. At that moment, Mo Chuandao looked at Fei Run, who was on the other side after he had plundered everyone's belongings. In his opinion, Lin Fan's Yuan power cultivation was only at level 5 martial master and was not worth mentioning at all. Moreover, there were some level 10 martial masters among the surviving martial artists. Even these people had to obey him and hand over their belongings. They did not dare to disobey his orders, let alone Fei Run. Mo Chuandao looked down on Fei Ren even more. What if I refuse? Faced with Mo Chuandao's threat, Fei Ren shook his head with a calm expression. Ever since he stepped onto the path of martial arts, he had encountered countless enemies. Killing and robbing were common occurrences for him. Putting aside the fact that those enemies had all died in the hands of Fei Run, even if Mo Chuandao was powerful, Lin Fan would not give in easily, let alone hand over his spiritual rings and treasures. Therefore, in Fei Ren's opinion, Mo Chuandao was not qualified. What? As soon as Lin Fan finished speaking, everyone, including Mo Chuandao, was stunned. They seemed to be surprised. Kid, I dare you to say that again. Mo Chuandao squinted his eyes and spoke again. His tone was low, and his face was as still as water. The Fei Run in front of him was only a small 5th-level martial master, while he was a disciple of the Celestial Arcanum sect, a famous 3rd-ranked sect in the northern continent. Not only was the difference in strength and background huge, he never thought that Fei Run would dare to disobey his request. Moreover, in Mo Chuandao's opinion, Fei Ren's actions were a blatant provocation. Is this kid crazy? He's only at level 5 martial master, and he dares to provoke this Taoist rogue young man. Young people are still hot-blooded. Looks like this kid is done for. Money is just a worldly possession. If you hand over your spiritual rings and treasures, you might be able to keep your life. Why do you have to? Seeing that Fei Run had ignored Mo Chuandao's threat, the crowd looked at each other. In the next moment, discussions broke out everywhere. Some of them looked at Fei Run with a hint of emotion in their eyes, as though they felt that Fei Run was courting death. "I refuse," with a grin. Fei Rin's handsome face remained calm. He said plainly, "Did you hear me clearly this time?" Although his opponent was a half-step into the martial spirit realm and had the innate tyrant body, the limitless Ice Emperor body, he was very powerful. However, he also had the Dharma Golden Buddha body, an acquired mighty body. At the same time, he also had the puppet Whitey and the Immortal refining cauldron. He was not afraid of the opponent's strength. Ever since Fei Rin stepped onto the path of martial arts, no one had ever been able to take advantage of him, let alone snatch things from his hands. Not to mention that Mo Chuandao was a disciple of the Celestial Arcanum sect, an ancient sect in the northern continent. Even if the other party was the Celestial Arcanum sect, he wouldn't be able to do it. "You brat, you're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Chuandao's face darkened, and rage surged on his handsome and pale face. In the next moment, he raised his hand and threw a punch at Fei Rin. Boom! Boundless sky blue origin power swept out and turned into an ice crystal fist radiance. It was exceptionally dazzling. Although it was just an ordinary punch, the power of Mo Chuandao's punch was enough to kill any expert below level 10 martial master. Fei Rin was only a level 5 martial master. In Mo Chuandao's opinion, he would not be able to block the punch. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Mo Chuandao did not want to fight. The previous fight with the red-robed bald man and the innate overlord body had consumed much of his Dantian's origin power. However, Fei Rin's provocation had infuriated him. Therefore, Mo Chuandao did not mind killing one more person to establish his dominance. Boom! Just as the ice crystal fist radiance was about to hit Fei Rin's body, a crimson golden radiance suddenly surged out. Like a dragon entering the sea, it instantly covered Fei Rin's entire body. His aura was magnificent. At the same time, it shattered the ice crystal fist radiance into nothingness. Fei Rin's body grew by more than 10 feet. There was a crimson red dot in the middle of his forehead. At the same time, a lifelike golden Buddha shadow appeared behind him. His aura was comparable to Mo Chuandao's when he used the innate overlord body. Everyone's expression changed drastically as if they had seen a ghost. Overlord body? I didn't expect you to have an acquired overlord body. Like everyone else, Mo Chuandao squinted his eyes after his attack was broken. A look of surprise flashed across his face. Although Fei Rin's mighty body was only an acquired one, its power and momentum did not seem to be weaker than his innate mighty body. The golden Buddha phantom behind Fei Rin even gave him a sense of oppression. 2 overlord bodies. I didn't expect this kid to have an overlord body. This is unprecedented. A freckled martial artist in the crowd swallowed his saliva and mumbled to himself. His face was full of shock. The power of the overlord body was several times stronger than the power of concept. It was almost synonymous with genius. 1 in 100,000 or even 1 in a million martial artists might not necessarily have an overlord body. However, today, 2 martial artists with overlord bodies, Fei Rin and Mo Chuandao, appeared in the ancestral mausoleum at the same time. This gave everyone an illusion. Since when did the overlord body become so common? Fei Rin took a step forward and exhaled a breath of air. A hint of battle intent appeared in his dark eyes. He said casually, I know you're strong and have an innate overlord body. However, you can't beat me with just your mouth. Although he looked down on his opponent in battle tactics, he would not underestimate his opponent in battle. This was also Fei Rin's battle experience. After all, Mo Chuandao had the upper hand in terms of cultivation base. If he underestimated his opponent, he might lose. Ha ha, what a joke. As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Chuandao laughed out loud. There was a hint of disdain and mockery at the corner of his mouth. At the same time, he could not help but laugh, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Kid, I admit that I underestimated you. However, do you really think that you can defeat me just because you have an acquired overlord body? Compared to the disciples of the archaic mysteries sect, you're still far from it. Even if I give you 3 moves, what can you do to me? Mo Chuandao's tone was cold and filled with disdain. He had only used less than 50% of his strength in the previous punch. Even if Fei Run had easily blocked it with his acquired Overlord body, it was nothing. In his opinion, Fei Run was still not his match. How does a disciple of the Archaic Mysteries sect compare to a disciple of the Clear Sea sect? In the face of Mo Chuandao's mockery, Fei Ren's expression remained calm as he replied plainly, "You're from the Clear Sea sect?" Mo Chuandao narrowed his eyes and asked coldly again. The Clear Sea sect was a famous third-rank sect in the Eastern continent. At the same time, it was also the overlord of the southeastern region. In terms of strength and foundation, it was not weaker than the Archaic Mysteries sect behind him. At such a young age, Fei Run had already condensed and acquired Overlord body. Furthermore, his elemental energy cultivation wasn't too weak either. Mo Chuandao wouldn't be too surprised if Fei Run was really from the Clear Sea sect. After all, he was a genius disciple nurtured by a third-grade sect. No, with a grin, Fei Ren's handsome face revealed a hint of viciousness. However, regardless of whether it's the disciples of the Archaic Mysteries sect or the Clear Sea sect, they all have to kneel before me. Chapter 452. Shameless Boasting. Mo Chuandao's face froze for a moment before he flew into a rage. In his opinion, even if his opponent had the acquired mighty body, he was no match for him. Moreover, Fei Ren's cultivation was only at LV 5 Martial Master, while he was at the half-step to Martial Spirit Realm. He had a huge advantage in terms of cultivation level. Ice sealing the world. Sky blue energy surged out from his body and turned into beautiful ice crystals that blasted towards Fei Ren. Swoosh! Boom, boom, boom. Countless beautiful ice crystals swept out, and the surrounding temperature plummeted. Half of the sky seemed to be covered with a layer of white barrier, which made one's heart palpitate. The power of this move was several times stronger than before. Even an LV1 Martial Spirit Realm expert would not dare to take it head-on. In the face of Fei Ren's repeated provocations, Mo Chuandao's killing intent was triggered and he attacked with all his might. Dharma Fist. In the face of the thousands of beautiful ice crystals, Fei Ren's face turned serious. He then threw out a punch with his left hand, and a large amount of golden energy swept out in all directions. Both the Dharma Thousand Transformation Technique and Dharma Fist had reached the complete realm. Although his energy cultivation was not as strong as Mo Chuandao's and was only at LV 5 Martial Master, the power of this punch was still impressive. It was comparable to a LV1 Martial Spirit Realm expert's all-out attack. Bam! Under everyone's gazes, the beautiful sky blue ice crystals collided with the golden fist energy and then exploded. A boundless power spread out, and at the same time, a large number of ice crystals shattered and turned into nothingness. Crack! In the sky, only a few ice crystals could break through the defense of the reddish-gold fist force and reach Fei Ren. However, they were crushed by his hand in the next moment and couldn't cause any damage. The golden Buddha shadow behind Fei Ren was still shining brightly. Although the Dharma Golden Buddha body was only an acquired tyrant body, it was derived from the 9th grade cultivation method, the Dharma Thousand Transformation Technique. The complete form of the Dharma Golden Buddha body was not any weaker than Mo Chuandao's innate tyrant body, the Infinite Ice Emperor body. It could be seen from the repeated clashes between the two. On the other side of the sky. What? Mo Chuandao's handsome face was stunned when he saw that his attack was once again neutralized by Fei Ren. Disbelief was written all over his face. Previously, he hadn't been able to defeat Fei Ren with a single move. It could be understood that he hadn't used his full strength, or even that it was Fei Ren's luck. However, he had already used all his strength in that move. Furthermore, he had even used the power of the Infinite Ice Emperor body. Yet, he was still unable to hurt Fei Ren. Is that all you've got? Fei Ren slowly loosened his fist and the ice crystals in his palm shattered one after another. The next moment, he looked at Imo Chuandao again, his eyes still calm. "Brat, you're pissing me off." The corners of Imo Chuandao's mouth twitched as his face flushed red. Killing intent flickered in his eyes. It was clear that he was enraged and wanted to kill the other party. Limitless Ice Emperor Body. With a roar, countless sky blue origin power gushed out from Imo Chuandao's dantian. At the same time, his aura skyrocketed, and his eyes became extremely deep and icy blue. It seemed like he no longer intended to hold back, and instead he unleashed the full power of the innate tyrant body. Boom! The tyrant body was unleashed, and the weather changed. As a disciple of the third-grade sect, Celestial Arcanum sect, Imo Chuandao lived up to his name. The limitless Ice Emperor body that he possessed was extremely powerful as well. When he unleashed his full power, an indescribably powerful aura appeared spontaneously and instantly engulfed the entire place, causing everyone's heart to palpitate. Countless sky-blue air currents surrounded his body like ribbons. Half of the sky seemed to be covered by snow, and the temperature plummeted as if it had fallen into an ice barrier. The origin power aura on Imo Chuandao's body skyrocketed, and he broke through to the martial spirit realm. Imo Chuandao didn't even unleash the full power of the innate tyrant body when he killed the red-robed bald man. Fei Ren was the first person to force him into such a state. Huff! There was a throbbing in his dantian, and in the next moment, Fei Ren spat out a mouthful of turbid air. At the same time, he activated the Dharma Golden Buddha body to its limit. The Golden Buddha shadow behind him shone even brighter, and its aura wasn't any weaker than Imo Chuandao's. Ice Dragon Palm. With a roar, Imo Chuandao's body shot out like an arrow, and a large amount of origin power swept out. Then, it swept up a roaring ice crystal dragon and charged towards Fei Ren. The ice crystal dragon shook the heavens and the earth, and its aura was so powerful that even a half-step to martial spirit realm expert wouldn't dare to face it head-on. Break! Facing the ice crystal dragon, Fei Ren didn't show any fear. Under the cover of the Dharma Golden Buddha body, he charged forward like a wild beast. At the same time, the green dragon halberd in his right hand was filled with origin power, and instantly, a sharp green halberd shadow was slashed out. Rumble! The ice crystal dragon roared, and the green halberd shadow swept out. For a moment, they were evenly matched. Two different majestic forces filled the entire sky, and even the ground beneath everyone's feet trembled slightly, as if it was going to explode. Although the green dragon halberd was only a Tier 5 spiritual treasure, under the support of Fei Ren's Dharma Golden Buddha body and the Golden Origin power, its power had increased. Even if it was just a casual attack, it was enough to kill an ordinary half-step to martial spirit realm expert. If Imo Chuandao didn't have the innate dominance body and wasn't a disciple of the Celestial Arcanum sect, but an ordinary half-step to martial spirit realm rogue cultivator, he wouldn't be a match for Fei Ren at all. This lad is so powerful to be able to fight evenly with the Taoist-robed youth. Oh my, he's only a level 5 martial master, right? With such a cultivation, he can fight evenly with a half-step to martial spirit realm expert with the innate dominance body. If this news were to spread out, it would be bragging for a few years. If I'm not wrong, this lad's background is definitely not simple. I didn't expect the opening of the Ancestral Mausoleum to attract so many geniuses, seeing that Fei Ren and Imo Chuandao were locked in an intense battle and were locked in a stalemate. The crowd's expression changed as they began to discuss among themselves. Why is this lad getting braver as the battle goes on? After another exchange of blows, Imo Chuandao retreated and landed on the horizon. His eyes were filled with uncertainty as he looked at Fei Ren. In the battle, even with the innate dominance body, he couldn't do anything to Fei Ren. On the contrary, Fei Ren's aura was getting stronger and stronger, even showing signs of a breakthrough. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, a long laugh was heard in the sky. In the next moment, Fei Rin's figure appeared again. At the same time, his origin power aura was much stronger and more refined than before. This lad has broken through. Sensing the change in Fei Rin's aura, Chuandao couldn't help but widen his eyes. His tone was filled with disbelief, as if he had seen a ghost. Under the stimulation of the battle, Lin Fan's origin power cultivation had broken through again. Level 6 Martial Master. It's all thanks to your all-out attack. Otherwise, it would have taken me at least a few months to break through. The green dragon halberd hung horizontally in the sky. Fei Rin's eyes were burning with passion as a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. In the intense battle with Chuandao, his dantian and body were under immense pressure. Under the stimulation of this pressure, his origin power cultivation had broken through again and stepped into level 6 Martial Master. Chapter 453. In the sky, the atmosphere was tense. Although Chuandao was a half-step to martial spirit realm, he had the infinite Ice Emperor body. However, he still couldn't do anything to Fei Rin. You wanted to give me a 3-move handicap. Now, you're still unable to defeat me after dozens of moves. With a grin, Fei Rin spoke again. Chuandao couldn't defeat him even when Chuandao went all out. Now that Chuandao had a breakthrough in his cultivation, Chuandao couldn't do anything to him. Chuandao's face darkened in the face of Jiang Chen's mockery. His ice-blue eyes were filled with unwillingness. Although he was very unhappy, he also knew that there was no chance for him to kill Fei Rin. Although Fei Rin's cultivation had just broken through to level 6 Martial Master, his overall strength was comparable to any level 1 Martial Spirit Realm expert. This kid is most likely from the Clear Sea sect. What the hell? Since when did the Clear Sea sect have such a freak? Chuandao clenched his fists and gradually retracted his origin power. At the same time, he dispersed the power of the infinite Ice Emperor body, and his body returned to normal. Due to his previous probing and the fact that Fei Rin had the infinite Ice Emperor body, Chuandao recognized him as a Clear Sea sect disciple. At that moment, he also recognized the young man as a disciple of the Clear Sea sect. After all, the Clear Sea sect was not only the overlord of the southeastern region, but was also famous throughout the entire eastern continent. It was a true third-grade sect, and all of its disciples were martial geniuses with extraordinary talent. If the location of the palace ruins is revealed, it will definitely attract attention. I can't drag this out any longer. Chuandao collected his thoughts and looked solemn. Continuing the fight would only be a waste of origin power. Even if Fei Rin couldn't kill him, he couldn't kill him either. At most, they would be evenly matched. Now that more and more martial artists had entered the ancestral mausoleum to search for treasures, their opponents were also getting stronger. If he lost the opportunity to compete for the Martial King Realm's opportunity because of a moment of anger, it wouldn't be worth it. Therefore, Chuandao wanted to retreat and preserve his strength. He didn't want to tangle with Fei Rin anymore. Moreover, he had already plundered many spiritual rings and treasures in the previous battle. Even if he ran into a wall with Fei Rin, he wouldn't lose anything. Brat, you win. However, I will remember this debt. The disciples of the Celestial Arcanum sect will never lose out. Just you wait. After glaring fiercely at Fei Rin, Chuandao turned around and left in a hurry. He turned into a blue stream of light and disappeared into the horizon. Ran away? The expressions of everyone present froze when they saw Chuandao suddenly slip away. They were greatly surprised. After all, with Chuandao's powerful strength and the innate dominating body, ordinary half-step to martial spirit realm experts were no match for him. He was comparable to a true LV-1 martial spirit realm expert. However, in front of Fei Rin, his opponent was unable to unleash his full strength. Even if he used all of his strength, he could only fight to a standstill. This was something that no one had expected. Celestial Arcanum sect. Looking in the direction where Chuandao disappeared, Fei Run retracted his origin energy. The golden Buddha, shadow, gradually dissipated and returned to normal. His expression was calm. Although he had never heard of the Celestial Arcanum sect, Imo Chuandao was a disciple of the Celestial Arcanum sect and had some understanding of the Clear Sea sect. That was enough to show that he had a powerful background. The Celestial Arcanum sect that he had mentioned was probably a powerful sect that was even more powerful than the Scorching Sun sect. After all, even the Scorching Sun sect, a rank 6 sect, couldn't nurture a young genius with the innate dominating body, let alone Imo Chuandao, who had stepped into the half-step to martial spirit realm at such a young age. Moreover, compared to Fei Ren's archenemy, the inner sect disciple Ju Wuchang, Imo Chuandao's strength was several times stronger. Tangxue also mentioned the Clear Sea sect before. Could she be from the Clear Sea sect? Raising his eyebrows, Fei Ren recalled the words that Tangxue, the night demon fairy, had left before she left. 3 years later, we shall meet at the Clear Sea sect. This was Tangshue's reply to his challenge. Fei Ren naturally wouldn't forget it, and remembered it clearly in his heart. Not only did this woman give him the motivation to strive for the martial Tao, but she had also stimulated his hidden desire to conquer. Not only did Fei Ren want to defeat her fair and square, but he also wanted her to submit to him and become his woman. That should be right. I'll have to find an opportunity to ask around in the future. Fei Ren calmed himself down and let out a heavy sigh. Although his strength had been increasing over the years, his knowledge and contacts had not kept up. He didn't have a clear understanding of some of the top sects and forces in the southeast region and even the eastern continent. Just like the Clear Sea sect that Tangxue had mentioned and the Celestial Arcanum sect behind Imo Chuandao, he had never heard of them before. Although Imo Chuandao had left and there was one less major threat, Fei Ren was still present. No one dared to act rashly. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They all looked at each other with fear. If Fei Ren wanted to kill them, they wouldn't be able to resist even if they worked together. After all, even someone as powerful as the Celestial Arcanum sect's disciple, Imo Chuandao, who possessed the innate tyrant body, couldn't do anything to Fei Ren, let alone these rogue cultivators. Their strength was not even on the same level. Do any of you know the whereabouts of the palace ruins? Fei Ren glanced around and asked again. Among these survivors, besides the rogue cultivators, there were also some people from the 5 major tribes. He thought that he would be able to find out some clues. After all, the greatest treasure in the ancestral mausoleum was the opportunity inheritance left behind by Azir, a martial king. If he wanted to obtain the opportunity inheritance left behind by Azir, he would have to find the whereabouts of the palace ruins. Ever since he entered the ancestral mausoleum, Fei Ren had been fighting nonstop. Although he had obtained many treasures along the way, he still hadn't obtained any information about the palace ruins. Moreover, he hadn't met up with Zhang Han and the others. Now it was time for him to head to the palace ruins. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone exchanged glances. Then they shook their heads. They did not seem to understand what Fei Ren was asking. No one knows. When he saw this, Fei Ren's face darkened. Young hero, I know a little. Seeing that Fei Ren was about to get angry, everyone's expression changed slightly. Everyone felt that they were in danger. In the next moment, an old man wearing a beast skin robe stepped forward and said in a trembling voice, as if he was afraid that Fei Ren would attack again. Old man, what do you know? When he saw the old man in the beast robe step forward, Fei Ren asked again. His tone was slightly gentler. The old man's origin power cultivation was neither high nor low. He was only at level 8 martial master, the same as the 3rd elder of the Shichuo tribe, Kublai. If he could find out the whereabouts of the palace ruins from the old man, he could save some effort and time. He wouldn't have to wander around the ancestral mausoleum like a headless fly. Young hero, I'm from the Dali tribe. Previously, our tribe leader found the whereabouts of the palace ruins and summoned all of us to gather at the palace ruins. However, before this old man could make a move, I was caught up in the sandstorm tornado's pursuit. The old man in the beast robe from the Dali tribe cupped his hands at Fei Ren and spoke again. His tone was filled with fear and trepidation. "This is a map. It has the specific location and markings of the palace ruins." As he spoke, the old man in the beast robe took out a simple sheepskin scroll from his sleeve. It seemed to be the map he was talking about. That's right. With a surge of elemental energy, Fei-Ren sucked the map into his palm. In the next moment, a smile appeared on Fei-Ren's face. Just as the old man said, this sheepskin scroll recorded the whereabouts of the palace ruins. Chapter 454. At least I didn't put in much effort. After a quick glance at the map, Fei-Ren left the place, leaving the shocked crowd behind. After all, he was only a level 5 martial master. Although he had a breakthrough in the battle, he was only a level 6 martial master. With such a cultivation, he was able to force Imo Chuandao, a disciple of the Celestial Arcanum sect who possessed the innate dominating body, to retreat. In the clouds, a gray figure cut across the sky, stirring up a strong wind. At the same time, a determined and handsome face was revealed. It should be right in front. After taking out the map from the spirit ring, Fei-Ren was deep in thought. According to the markings on the map, the location of the Imperial Palace ruins had been found by the people of the 5 major tribes. Moreover, it was not far from where Fei-Ren was, only about 2,000 miles away. With his current speed, he could reach there in about a day. A day might be a long time to ordinary people, but to martial artists, it was very short. After all, martial artists cultivated the Tao of origin power. Regardless of whether they were cultivating in seclusion or meditating, it would take months or even years. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a huge and majestic palace shadow gradually appeared in front of Fei-Ren's eyes. As he got closer, the palace shadow became clearer until its true appearance was revealed. An ancient and heavy golden palace sat at the top of a towering mountain. Around the golden palace were cliffs, like a moon hanging high in the sky. Although the golden palace was dilapidated due to the passage of time, one could still vaguely see its former grandeur. At the same time, there were golden crows made of giant stones on both sides of the palace. The golden crows flew high in the sky, as if symbolizing the power and majesty of the Desert Dynasty Emperor, Azir. The palace ruins. Seeing this, Fei-Ren managed to stop himself as his eyes lit up. The golden palace in front of them was the ruins of the Desert Dynasty's palace. At the same time, there were many martial artists gathered in front of the palace ruins, and there was a trend of increasing. Many martial artists from all over the ancestral mausoleum were rushing over, intending to get a share of the loot from the martial king's treasure. As far as the eye could see, countless powerful origin power auras gathered in the sky. There were all kinds of people among them. In addition to the people of the 5 major tribes who each occupied a corner, there were many sects and clans nearby that Fei-Ren could not name. There were also many martial master realm loose cultivators. Countless fiery gazes were fixed on the golden palace at the top of the mountain. It was obvious that the people present were here for the Imperial Palace ruins and the Martial King realm inheritance, Azir's opportunity. So many people. Taking a deep breath, Fei-Ren's eyes also revealed a trace of shock. At this time, including the experts of the 5 major tribes, there were at least 1,000 warriors gathered in front of the ruins of the Imperial Palace. Moreover, most of them were experts above level 5 martial masters. As for those below martial masters, there was not a single one. After all, those who were able to come here, regardless of whether they were martial artists or geniuses from sects or families, had to have some strength. Otherwise, they would not even be able to deal with the high-level demonic beasts in the ancestral mausoleum, let alone fight for the treasure. Grand Elder and the others should be here, too. Fei-Ren calmed himself down and looked at the other side of the sky, looking for Zhang Han and the others. Although he was separated from the Shichuo tribe at the beginning, he still had a chance to meet up. However, the 4th Elder, Timu who was with him, had died in the hands of the bloodthirsty ancient vine. Therefore, he had lost contact with Zhang Han and the others. They're here. Fei-Ren's gaze stopped in front of a group, and in the next moment, his body flashed, and he flew toward the other side. Grand Elder, Third Elder, I hope you've been well. Fei Rin's body landed in front of Zhang Han, Kublai, and the others. He cupped his hands and said calmly, Fei Rin kid, ha 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 kid, you're finally here. This old man almost thought that something had happened to you. Not simple. I didn't expect your origin power cultivation to break through again and step into rank 6 martial master. Seeing Fei Rin suddenly appear in front of them, Zhang Han, Kublai, and the others were stunned for a moment before they exclaimed. Kublai even went up and patted Fei Rin's shoulder as he sighed. After all, he was only a rank 2 martial master at the beginning, and in just half a month his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Moreover, when they first entered the ancestral mausoleum, Fei Rin had been separated from them. Zhang Han, Kublai, and the others naturally did not know about Fei Rin's experiences and opportunities in the ancestral mausoleum. Fei Rin? He was Fei Rin. He's only a rank 6 martial master junior. At this moment, behind Zhang Han, Kublai, and the others, a green-clothed elder had a strange expression. Like Kublai, he was also one of the 5 elders of the Shotoa tribe. At the same time, he was also the second elder, second only to the first elder, Zhang Han. His origin power cultivation had already reached rank 10 martial master. He originally thought that the Fei Rin mentioned by Zhang Han would be someone powerful, but the Fei Rin in front of him was only a rank 6 martial master junior. Compared to the others present, he was not even worth mentioning. In fact, his strength was ranked at the bottom. The green-clothed elder did not understand why such a young junior could make the Shotoa tribe's first elder, Zhang Han, unable to forget him. These days, more and more martial artists have entered the ancestral mausoleum, and there are many powerful geniuses. Kid, I was just lucky and broke through. Facing Kublai's praise, Fei Rin did not become arrogant and only nodded. Although his strength had surpassed Zhang Han, Kublai, and the others, he was a low-key person and would not be too flamboyant. That's right, kid. Do you have any news about Timu? Ever since we entered the ancestral mausoleum, we have not been able to contact him. Kublai changed the topic and asked. From his point of view, Linyan might have some news about Timur. This, senior third elder, unfortunately, the fourth elder has died. Facing Kublai's question, Fei Rin first coughed a few times before speaking with an embarrassed expression. He had already died at the hands of the bloodthirsty ancient vines, so Zhang Han and Kublai naturally could not contact him. Dead. Hearing this, not only Kublai, but Zhang Han and the green-clothed elder's expressions also changed as if they were in disbelief. After all, Timur was the 4th elder of the Shotoa tribe and was a rank 7 martial master. If he died, it would be a huge blow to the Shotoa tribe. Yes, when we first entered the ancestral mausoleum, the 4th elder and I were attacked together. In the end, the 4th elder died to the enemy in order to save me. Sigh. At this point, Fei Rin sighed and furrowed his eyebrows. His acting skills were comparable to an Oscar, and there was not a single flaw in it. Impossible. The 4th elder was a rank 7 martial master. How could he die so easily? Before he finished speaking, the green-clothed elder immediately denied it with a solemn expression. Senior, if you don't believe me, then there's nothing I can do. Seeing the green-clothed elder's objection, Fei Rin only shrugged and did not say anything. Now that Timu was dead, no one else knew about the bloodthirsty ancient vines, vermilion fruit, and 1,000-year blood lotus. Enough. The 4th elder is dead, so there's no point in talking anymore. Let's think about how to break the formation and enter the palace. Glancing at the green-clothed elder, Zhang Han also interrupted with a helpless tone. Although he was still skeptical, he still chose to believe Fei Rin this time. Moreover, according to the ancestral teachings of the Shotoa tribe, it was not easy to enter the palace ruins. There is an ancient formation outside the palace ruins that seemed to have been left behind by Azir. As for the strength of this formation, no one knew. Chapter 455. That's right, the dead can't be revived. The most important thing right now is to think about how to break the formation outside the palace ruins. On the side, Kublai also spoke. Although Tur, the fourth elder, had died, if they could obtain a portion of the treasures and opportunities left behind by Azir, their Suchuo tribe could still rise again. They could even aim to become the leader of the 5 great tribes and overturn the former Polo tribe. Facing Zhang Han and Kublai's advice, the green-clothed elder was filled with doubts, but he could do nothing about it and remain silent. After all, he was only the second elder of the Suchuo tribe. In terms of strength and status, he was far from the great elder Zhang Han. Since they had already chosen to believe in Fei Run, the green-clothed elder naturally had nothing to say. At this moment, more and more warriors gathered at the peak of the mountain. Countless greedy gazes fell on the golden palace in the center, and the atmosphere was tense. "Chief, there are more and more people. Should we make a move?" In front of the Paluo tribe, a white-haired elder took a step forward and looked at Indra, who was in front of him. Not only was their Paluo tribe the strongest, but they were also the first to discover the location of the palace ruins. As for why they did not rashly enter the palace ruins, it was because they were wary of the nameless formation outside the Golden Palace. According to the ancestral teachings, there was a powerful formation outside the palace, but its power and scale were unknown. Not only the Paluo tribe, but the other 4 tribes were also clear about this. "No rush. Let's wait a bit longer." Indra stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes dark. From his perspective, this was a test of patience. When more and more warriors gathered near the palace ruins, someone would not be able to hold back and would make a move out of greed. At that time, these people would be willing to be cannon fodder. Why haven't the 5 tribes made a move yet? Could it be that there's a trap in the Golden Palace? I'm not sure, but I don't think it's wrong. This is where the palace ruins are. I'm guessing that the palace ruins aren't that simple. Otherwise, the 5 tribes would not be so calm. There must be something fishy going on. As more and more martial warriors gathered nearby, the sounds of discussion rose one after another. There were doubts and astonishment. Everyone present looked in the direction of the upper echelons of the 5 great tribes at the same time. It's just a dilapidated palace. What's there to be afraid of? Finally, a loud shout came from the crowd. In the next moment, a burly man in a tight suit flew out and headed straight for the golden hall at the top of the mountain. This burly man's cultivation was not weak. He had already reached LV8 Martial Master Realm. At this moment, greed appeared on his face. It seemed that he had been coveting the treasures in the palace ruins for a long time and could no longer hold back. Someone is making a move. The moment the burly man made his move, a few gasps of surprise came from the crowd. In the next moment, the atmosphere became explosive, and everyone was ready to make a move. However, the upper echelons of the 5 major tribes still did not move, as if they had no intention of stopping them. This idiot will probably die a miserable death. Hull narrowed his eyes as he watched the burly man rush to the golden hall at the top of the mountain alone. He couldn't help but sneer. As the patriarch of the Barkshi tribe, he naturally knew that there was a nameless formation outside the ruins of the imperial palace. At the same time, he also understood the reason why the other 4 tribes had not made a move yet. They wanted to use these rogue cultivators as cannon fodder to pave the way. Swoosh! As he landed, the burly man in a tight suit looked around the golden hall vigilantly. He did not choose to rush forward rashly. At this moment, there was still no change in the surroundings of the golden hall. Only wisps of wind whistled past without triggering any formation. Everything was normal, and there did not seem to be any danger. Nothing? Seeing this scene, all the warriors present, including the burly man in a tight suit, were stunned. It seems that there is no danger. The courage in his heart suddenly grew. In the next moment, the burly man's figure flashed and rushed into the hall. Opportunities and treasures belong to the fated ones. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouted. In the next moment, the crowd became restless and the atmosphere became anxious. Then, a large number of warriors rushed toward the golden hall below. Originally, everyone present was just watching. Now that there was no danger outside the Golden Hall, they naturally could not hold back and made a move to seize the treasures. Could it be that there's something wrong with the ancestral teachings left by the ancestors? On the other side of the sky, seeing the crowd of warriors rushing toward the Golden Hall below, Zhang Han's face was filled with disbelief. According to his speculation, as long as a foreign warrior stepped into the vicinity of the palace ruins, it should have triggered the formation outside. However, there was no change at all. Strange, there is no aura of a formation here. On the side, Faerun also frowned slightly. Although his cultivation base was only at the 6th level of the martial master realm, his mental strength was close to the 4th level of the profound martial realm. He was very sensitive to the aura of a formation. If there was a formation near the Golden Hall below, it would not escape his senses. However, no matter how Faerun used his origin energy to investigate, he still could not detect a trace of the aura of a formation. Boom! At this moment, a deafening roar was heard. In the next moment, the ground trembled. Then, spiderweb-like cracks appeared with a bang. A powerful aura of a formation appeared out of thin air, instantly enveloping the entire Golden Hall. It caused the expressions of everyone present to change slightly as their hearts trembled. The power of a formation. The sudden change also caused Indra's eyes to shrink slightly, revealing a trace of shock. Outside the palace ruins, there was indeed a powerful, nameless formation. At this moment, a scream was heard. The brawny man who first broke into the Golden Hall was sent flying backward. Blood splattered across the sky, and finally, he crashed to the ground and turned into a cold corpse. Not far away, a tall, grayish-brown, humanoid terracotta soldier appeared. At this moment, its eyes were empty and emotionless, and its left hand was in a punching posture. It seemed to be some kind of puppet, and that brawny man from before was obviously killed by him. What is this thing? Facing the sudden appearance of the humanoid terracotta soldier, the warriors around the Golden Hall had different expressions. Boom! Just when everyone was surprised and bewildered and stopped moving forward, another enormous rumble sounded out. In the next moment, humanoid terracotta soldiers of different shapes and even beast-like terracotta soldiers rushed out from the cracks on the ground. At the same time, they came around the hall as if they had been lurking underground for a long time. In just a few breaths, everyone was surrounded by a large number of terracotta soldiers, and there were hundreds of them. These terracotta soldiers were not only powerful, but also murderous. They seemed to be controlled by some kind of formation. At the same time, they were protecting the Golden Hall in front of them, and were determined to kill all intruders. Kill, as long as we get rid of these dead puppets. The treasures in the palace ruins will be at our fingertips. Although there were terracotta soldiers blocking the way, it obviously could not stop everyone's desire to seize the treasures. In the next moment, the area around the Golden Hall became a battlefield. A large amount of origin energy scattered in all directions, and warriors fell from time to time. At the same time, some terracotta soldiers were shattered and turned into dust. On the other side of the sky, terracotta soldier formation. At this moment, looking at the Golden Hall that had been reduced to a battlefield, the chief of the Dali tribe, a boss, narrowed his eyes, and his expression was full of shock. Chapter 456. Just as the ancestral teachings of the 5 great tribes had mentioned, there was indeed a nameless formation protecting the outer perimeter of the royal palace, and near the Golden Hall below, the large number of terracotta soldiers that had drilled out from the ground were controlled by the power of the formation, the source of their energy all coming from the eye of the formation. For ordinary cultivators, there were only 2 ways to break a spirit array. One was to exhaust the power of the spirit array, and the other was to directly destroy the spirit array's eye. The spirit array's eye was the core of a spirit array. Once it was destroyed, it would automatically collapse. However, the power of the formation near the Golden Hall was extraordinary. After all, it was able to control hundreds of terracotta soldiers to move at the same time. Its grade was at least middle Earth rank or above. Therefore, it was not easy to find the eye of the formation and destroy it. The grade of this array is at least medium Earth rank or above. Like a boss, Faerun also saw the power and mystery of the Terracotta Army Formation at a glance. The Terracotta Army Formation, as the name suggested, was a formation that controlled a large number of terracotta puppets to defend against the enemy. In the Terracotta Army Formation, there were hundreds of powerful terracotta puppets. The strength of these terracotta puppets was above the martial master realm. Some of the powerful beast-shaped terracotta puppets were comparable to LV-10 martial master realm experts, and even half-step to martial spirit realm experts. Therefore, except for the owner of the ancestral tomb, Azir, the emperor of the Desert Dynasty, no one else had such means. Now that the array is out, as long as we get rid of these terracotta puppets, we can kill our way into the palace and get the treasure. In front of the Barkshi tribe, a tribe expert clenched his fists. "Chief, let's do it." As soon as he finished speaking, another expert of the Barkshi tribe spoke in a fiery tone. The next moment, he could not help but look at Coke in front of him. In the Barkshi tribe, Coke was the chief of the tribe. Although everyone was eager to take action, the experts of the Barkshi tribe did not dare to act on their own without his order. "Let's do it." Coke nodded at his subordinate's suggestion. The next moment, his figure flew out and rushed toward the golden palace below. "Charge!" Behind him, the experts of the Barkshi tribe also rushed out and rushed toward the golden palace below. Boom! After shattering the two terracotta soldiers with a single palm strike, Coke's speed did not decrease at all as he ran straight toward the entrance of the hall not far away. Although the terracotta soldiers were powerful, they could not withstand a single blow from Coke, who was at the half-step to martial spirit realm. In just a short quarter of an hour, dozens of terracotta soldiers had died under Hull's hands. What powerful strength! As expected of the chief of the Barkshi tribe, his strength is indeed astonishing. At this time, seeing Hull charging into the group of terracotta soldiers and slaughtering them in all directions, the surrounding cultivators exclaimed softly with different expressions. Although he was only a half-step to the martial spirit realm, his overall strength was no weaker than a true LV-1 martial spirit realm expert. Roar! Perhaps Hull's powerful strength had attracted the attention of the other terracotta soldiers. A beastly roar was suddenly heard. The next moment, a bear-shaped terracotta soldier flew out and immediately attacked Hull. The strength of this beast-shaped terracotta soldier was not weak. Its aura was comparable to that of an LV-10 martial master expert. Die! Facing this beast-shaped terracotta soldier, Hull did not reduce his speed. At the same time, he raised his hand and blasted out a Yuan Power Fist Radiance with an imposing aura. Bang! Rumble! The Yuan Power Fist Radiance pierced through the sky and brought along a dull rumble of thunder. Then, it ruthlessly smashed onto the body of the beast-shaped terracotta soldier and exploded in the next moment. Boom! The beast-shaped terracotta soldier instantly shattered as if it could not withstand the powerful force of the fist. In the next moment, it turned into dust and disappeared. It was still no match for Hull. At the same time, on the other side, go! Just after the Barkshi tribe, the Paluo tribe, Shadi, Dali, and the other tribes also attacked the golden hall below. Elders, it's time for us to make our move. Seeing this scene, Faerun also let out a sigh of relief and then opened his mouth to speak. Although the terracotta army formation was powerful, it was unable to withstand the continuous attacks of everyone present. After all, there were more than a few thousand cultivators and experts from the 5 major tribes present. Most of them were experts above LV-5 Martial Master Realm. All right, let's kill our way in first. Nodding his head, Zhang Han also flew out. This time, other than the 5 elders of the Shotoa tribe, there were also many Martial Master Realm experts in the tribe going into the Ancestral Tomb. The team was very powerful. Even if 4th Elder Timu died along the way, it would not affect them from competing with the other 4 major tribes for the treasures of the palace ruins. Kid, remember to follow closely. Don't lose your life. Glancing at Faerun, The elder in green snorted coldly and said in a meaningful tone. Then he flew away. As the second elder of the Shotowa tribe, he had always been brooding over the death of fourth elder Timur and did not trust Fei-Ren. Fei-Ren, kid, the second elder has always been like this. Don't take it to heart. Seeing the elder in green leave, Kublai also had a helpless expression on his face. Then he patted Fei-Ren's shoulder. It's fine. Shaking his head, Fei-Ren indicated that it was fine. No matter how much the elder disliked him, he did not care. It would not affect him from competing for the treasures of the palace ruins. However, if the elder in green insisted on seeking death, even with Zhang Han and Kublai's persuasion, Fei-Ren would not show any mercy. He would eliminate the root of the problem. As the experts of the 5 major tribes joined the battle, the originally imposing terracotta soldiers were forced to retreat. In a short while, more than half of them were killed. Among them, there were only a few beast-shaped terracotta soldiers left. Most of them were the weaker, human-shaped terracotta soldiers. Even so, the human warriors had also suffered many losses. Other than a portion of the wandering cultivators who were killed by the terracotta soldiers, the 5 major tribes had also lost some experts. At this moment, the surroundings of the Golden Hall were filled with broken puppet corpses and a large pool of blood. The battle was tragic. Dharma Fist, golden light, appeared around his body. In the next moment, Fei-Ren punched out and instantly pushed back several terracotta soldiers that were attacking from the left and right. At the same time, his body flickered and he stabbed out with the Azure Dragon Halberd, piercing through a level 10 martial master beast-shaped soldier and turning it into dust. Strange, this formation is at least Earth rank mid-rank. These terracotta soldiers are actually so weak. There is not even a single martial spirit realm terracotta soldier. How can this be? Landing on the ground, Fei-Ren's face was filled with doubt and even a trace of unease. In his impression, even the Scorching Sun Sect protective formation, the 9 9 Yang formation, was only a medium Earth rank formation. Its power was enough to kill experts below LV 5 martial spirit realm. However, the terracotta soldier formation in front of him, although there were many terracotta soldiers, its power was much weaker than he had imagined. Chapter 457. Something's wrong. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a few more terracotta soldiers pounced towards Fei-Ren in an aggressive manner. Although they were not Fei-Ren's opponent, these terracotta soldiers did not have any intelligence and were controlled by the array to protect the Golden Palace and kill intruders at the same time. Therefore, there was no such thing as fear. Damn it! Here they come again. Facing the attack of the terracotta soldiers, Fei-Ren immediately restrained his thoughts, and a trace of impatience flashed across his face. Although he could easily kill these terracotta soldiers, there were too many of them. If he killed all of them, it would waste a lot of his yuan power. Now that the treasures in the palace ruins and Azir's inheritance had yet to appear, there would definitely be an intense fight. Naturally, Fei-Ren would not waste his yuan power here. He needed to maintain his peak state at all times. Why'd he go? A white light flashed from the spirit ring on his finger, and Fei-Ren summoned Whitey in the next moment. Crack, crack! As soon as Puppet Whitey appeared, a deathly aura spread out in all directions. After devouring a large amount of demonic beast essence blood, Whitey's current strength was comparable to a level 6 martial master expert. Furthermore, its destructive power was astonishing. Not only could its bones turn into sharp bone blades, they could also regenerate. Compared to the terracotta soldiers around the Golden Palace, Whitey was superior in terms of strength and other aspects. Only those slightly stronger beast-shaped terracotta soldiers could block its attacks. As for the ordinary terracotta soldiers, they were defeated by Whitey. Boom! The bone blade in its hand swept across and instantly sent a few terracotta soldiers flying. In the next moment, Whitey turned into a white shadow and rapidly shuttled through the terracotta soldiers. Every time it attacked, a terracotta soldier would fall down and lose its fighting strength. It was like the Grim Reaper in the world. On the other side, in the chaotic battle, what a powerful puppet. I never thought that this kid would have such a treasure in his hands. If I have such a puppet, my strength will at least double. Seeing that Fei Run had refined a powerful puppet from his spiritual ring and was killing everyone, the surrounding martial artists and rogue cultivators were also surprised. A hint of greed even flashed across the eyes of some of them. Although they were both puppets, it was clear that the puppet in Fei Ren's hands was much stronger, and its destructive power was even more shocking. Although puppet Little White's strength was only around the 6th level of the Martial Master realm, the number of terracotta soldiers that fell under its feet was innumerable. Among them, there were even 9th-level Martial Master Realm terracotta soldiers that were unable to withstand puppet Little White's sharp bone blades. In the end, they were reduced to a pile of broken bones and dust. At this moment, at the edge of the chaotic crowd, a silhouette in a brocade robe appeared, and then a familiar young face appeared. I didn't expect Brother Fei Ren to have such a powerful puppet. Looking at puppet Little White and Fei Run, who were killing everyone not far away, Shun Lina's eyes were filled with shock. His throat moved slightly, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Unlike before, the aura on Shun Lina's body had become much stronger, and he had reached the 10th level of the Martial Master Realm. It seemed that he had obtained many opportunities and treasures in the ancestral mausoleum these days. Shun Lina had also received the news of the reappearance of the palace ruins, so he rushed over. However, compared to Fei Run, his improvement in strength was not worth mentioning. After all, Fei Ren was only at the 4th level of the Martial Master Realm, but he was able to kill the high spiritual rank magical beast, Iron-Eating Beast King, with one punch. Now that Fei Ren's cultivation had improved again and stepped into the 6th level of the Martial Master Realm, his strength had naturally increased greatly, and he could easily crush him. Is this the strength of the Scorching Sun sect's disciples? It seems that the gap between me and him is getting bigger and bigger. Restraining his shocked mind, Shun Linha gritted his teeth in the next moment. At the same time, he sent a beast-shaped terracotta flying with his palm. Although he was not as good as Fei Run, as a genius of the younger generation, he had a strong sense of self-esteem and did not want to fall too far behind. After a while, the terracotta soldiers that were blocking everyone were all swept away, and not a single one was left. As far as the eye could see, there were broken puppet corpses and bloodstains everywhere. At the same time, the atmosphere was once again anxious. Although there were no more terracotta soldiers blocking them, everyone knew very well that the biggest enemy in the fight for the treasures of the palace ruins was not the formation, nor the puppets, but the martial artists. It's finally over. After landing steadily and seeing that all the terracotta soldiers had been swept away, Fei Ren recalled puppet Little White and came to the side of Zhang Han and the others. So the trump card in your hand is a puppet at the 6th level of the Martial Master Realm. Returning to the group, the green-clothed elder looked at Fei Run and said in a low voice. Although he had never met Fei Run before, as the second elder of the Shotowa tribe, he had always been wary of Fei Run, a martial artist from the outside world. Unlike Zhang Han and Kublai, the green-clothed elder did not think that the death of the 4th elder, Timur, was that simple. There was a high chance that it was related to Fei Run, and he might even have been killed by him. Moreover, as Fei Run revealed puppet Little White, the green-clothed elder's suspicions grew deeper and deeper. And then, glancing at the green-clothed elder, Fei Run grinned and did not say anything. The way he saw it, there was no need for him to waste words with the azure-robed old man. If it weren't for Zhang Han, Kublai, and the others, he would have killed the azure-robed old man with a single punch and shut him up. You don't know manners. Seeing Fei Ren's nonchalant attitude, the green-clothed elder snorted and stopped asking, as if he knew that it was pointless. On the other side, in front of the group of the 5 tribes, the formation has been broken, and there is no longer any danger near the palace ruins. Taking a step forward, Yinshualuo spoke with a calm tone. As the only martial spirit realm existence in the 5 tribes, he naturally had good eyesight. He knew that the surrounding terracotta soldiers and puppets were all disabled, and the terracotta army formation had been broken. Brother Yinchualuo is right, I agree. As he spoke, a middle-aged man in a yellow robe stepped forward with a smile on his face. He was the martial arts expert of the Kshathi tribe. Du Qing, the current chief of the Kshathi tribe, had reached the half-step martial spirit realm. Among the 5 tribes, his overall strength was second only to Yinchualuo. As Du Qing spoke, the Shotowa tribe's grand elder Zhang Han, the Dali tribe's chief Abbas, and the others looked at each other and agreed without saying anything. As you said, it is indeed so. Looking around, seeing that the other 4 tribes had the same opinion, the chief of the Yusha tribe also nodded. After all, the power of this terracotta army formation was much weaker than he had imagined. Most of the terracotta soldiers and puppets were in the martial master realm, and none of them were in the martial spirit realm. Even without the help of the 5 tribes, the rogue cultivators from the outside world could easily defeat them. I don't think it's that simple. There might be stronger guys behind. If we let our guard down, we will lose our lives. Just as the 5 tribes had the same opinion, a man's voice suddenly came from the edge of the crowd. Then, the scene fell into silence. Chapter 458. In the next moment, everyone's gaze fell on Fei Run, who was standing at the edge of the crowd. Who was this kid? At this moment, not only the experts of the 5 major tribes, but even the rogue cultivators were puzzled. After all, Indra, Du Qing, Abbas, and the others were not only the leaders of the 5 major tribes, but they were also powerful experts of the older generation. On the other hand, not only did Fei Rin look unfamiliar, but he was also only a 6th-level martial master. He didn't have the qualifications to interrupt, let alone question the judgment of the 5 major tribes. In the eyes of the crowd, Fei Rin's actions were laughable. Fei Rin, kid, what did you see? On the side, Zhang Han spoke after seeing Fei Rin speak. Although he had some doubts about the mid-earth great array formation that Azir had set up back then, it was much weaker than he had imagined. However, he could not see anything unusual about it. After all, the Tao of arrays was closely related to the mental energy realm. Although Zhang Han's Yuan Qi cultivation wasn't weak, reaching the half-step martial spirit realm, his mental energy realm was only at the 2nd level of the profound martial realm. It was far inferior to Fei Rin. Yes, nodding his head, Fei Rin faced Zhang Han's doubts and said unhurriedly. Although the terracotta army array was broken, he could vaguely sense that the aura of the array lingering around the Golden Hall didn't disperse. It was just that it was hard to see with the naked eye. It was very strange. Kid, who are you? At this moment, within the crowd, an expert from the Paluo tribe also stepped forward and questioned. His tone was extremely cold. In his view, Fei Run dared to question the Polo tribe's patriarch Indra's judgment. Not only was he ignorant, but he was also provoking them. Idiot! Glancing at the Polo tribe's expert, Fei Rin shook his head and said indifferently, "The array left behind by a martial king is so powerful that even a half-step martial spirit realm expert can't do anything about it. Do you think that's possible? Is your brain filled with carbs? Bastard, how dare you scold me?" Seeing Fei Rin's disdainful expression, the Paluo expert's face turned ashen. He flew into a rage and was about to attack. Hold on. However, before he could rush out, he was stopped by Yinchualuo in the next moment. His face was cold. Tribe leader, looking at the cold-faced Indra, this Paluo tribe expert was also stunned for a moment. He did not seem to understand why the other party stopped him. "You're no match for him. You'll just be throwing your life away if you attack him." Indra's voice slowly came to his ears. In the next moment, the face of the Polo tribe's expert changed slightly, filled with disbelief. What kind of joke was this? Fei Rin was only at the 6th level of the Martial Master Realm, while he was an 8th level Martial Master Realm expert. He had the advantage of 2 levels, yet he was not a match for a young junior like Fei Rin. However, Indra was the current tribe leader of the Paluo tribe. His cultivation had reached the 1st level of the Martial Spirit Realm. His judgment and intuition would naturally not be wrong. Moreover, as the other party's subordinate, even if he had doubts, this Paluo tribe expert did not dare to refute. He immediately retreated resentfully. His eyes still revealed a trace of anger and killing intent when he looked at Fei Run. Obviously, if it wasn't for Indra stopping him, he would have killed Fei Run to vent his anger. Nonsense. You're just an outsider. How would you know the mystery of the terracotta army formation? Could it be that in your eyes, the judgment of the upper echelons of the 5 tribes is wrong? Just as he finished speaking, in the next moment, another person flew out with a sneer on his face. It was the expert of the Dali tribe, Hormusi, one of the confidants of the Dali tribe leader, Abbas. He was good at currying favor and was insidious. As for the reason why he refuted Fei Run, other than because he was unhappy with him, it was also to please his master, Abbas. After all, Abbas was the tribe leader of the Dali tribe. He was also one of the upper echelons of the 5 tribes. Who the hell are you? Seeing Hormusi suddenly jump out and clamor, Fei Run was not surprised. He glanced at him and said coldly, "Dali tribe, Hormusi." With a cold snort, Hormusi raised his chin and had a domineering attitude. After all, he was a LV8 Martial Master, and Fei Run was only a LV6 Martial Master. Oh, so it's a dog. Since when can a dog interrupt when a person is talking? Did I give you face? With a sneer, Fei Run still had a look of disdain in the face of Hormusi's hostility. To him, other than the upper echelons of the 5 tribes, the rest were all trash. They were not worthy of his attention. Now, if Hormusi insisted on seeking death, Fei Run did not mind sending him on his way. "Little bastard, you're courting death." In the face of Fei Run's mockery, Hormusi was instantly enraged. He immediately flew toward Fei Run to kill him. In his opinion, Lin Fan was just an outsider martial artist with no background. On the other hand, he was a favorite of the tribe leader of the Dali tribe, Abbas. Even if he killed Fei Run, it would be a small matter. Bam! However, before Hormusi's fist could reach Fei Run, it was easily blocked by Fei Run's hand. What? Hormusi's face changed slightly when his attack was blocked. Die! In the next moment, Fei Run threw out a punch with his backhand. A powerful golden fist force swept out and hit Hormusi's body. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Hormusi's body flew backward. Along the way, he broke a few huge rocks before he came to a stop. However, he could no longer stand up. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices, and he was no longer breathing. With just one punch, Hormusi, an LV8 martial master from the Dali tribe, was killed on the spot. "Lad, you killed Hormusi." In a flash, Lin Fan came before Hormusi's body. In the next moment, Abbas's face turned pale, and he was furious. After all, Hormusi was a favorite of his and an expert from the Dali tribe. Now that he had died at the hands of Fei Run, Abbas was naturally furious. "Aren't you the lad who followed Zhang Han back then? I didn't expect you to have the guts to kill someone from the 5 tribes." Similarly, Indra took a step forward and squinted his eyes. He looked at Fei Run coldly, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. Lin Fan was only a LV6 martial master. However, he had killed Hormusi, who was a LV8 martial master, with just one punch. Such strength was enough to attract Indra's attention. "Sir, Hormusi was just questioning you. Aren't you being too cruel?" In addition to Indra and Abbas, the head of the Dali tribe, also spoke. His face was solemn, and there was a hint of dissatisfaction in his words. After all, the dead Hormusi was still a member of the 5 tribes. As for Fei Run's actions, it was very obvious that he had angered 3 out of the 5 great tribes, causing them to be enraged. At this moment, the atmosphere in front of the Golden Hall gradually became tense and anxious. "It's this bastard lad. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road." In a corner of the crowd, a murky gray gaze shot out and vaguely swept across Fei Run's body. However, he did not dare to stay any longer. Offending 3 tribes at once. "Little bastard, you're dead this time." Withdrawing his gaze, The Taoist incorpse immediately pressed down the bamboo hat on his head. His eyes were full of resentment as he gritted his teeth and slowly left the place. He retreated to the back of the crowd as if he did not want to expose himself. As one of the elders of the Bone sect, he was not in the limelight in the ancestral mausoleum. He and his companions had killed many warriors in the King realm. Not only did they obtain a lot of treasures, but they also sacrificially refined several high-quality mummies and incorpses. However, in the end, all of these results were destroyed by Fei Ren. Not only did he lose a lot of mummies, but he also almost lost his life. Now that he had met Fei Ren again in the Imperial Palace ruins, the Taoist incorpse was naturally furious and wanted to kill him. However, the Taoist incorpse also knew that he was no match for Fei Ren. Now he could only endure in the dark and wait for an opportunity to take revenge. Chapter 459. Little bastard, when the time is right, I'll kill you with my own hands. Then I'll refine your corpse into a new mummy. With a strong desire for revenge in his heart, Taoist incorpse calmed himself down and turned his attention to the golden hall beside him. Now that Fei Ren's primary power cultivation had made another breakthrough and had stepped into LV6 Martial Master Realm, he was several times stronger than before. Naturally, Taoist incorpse was no match for him. In Taoist incorpse's opinion, as long as he could find some opportunities in the palace ruins and make another breakthrough in his primary power cultivation and step in a half-step to Martial Spirit Realm, or even LV1 Martial Spirit Realm, he would have a chance to take revenge and kill Fei Ren. In addition, in the battle with Fei Ren, Taoist incorpse had lost a lot of mummies in order to escape. Now, he urgently needed to find a new corpse to refine. Otherwise, his combat strength would be greatly reduced, and he would not be able to fully display the power of the Ghost Corpse skill. In front of the Golden Hall, the confrontation was still there, and the atmosphere was tense. What a joke. If I'm not strong enough, I'm afraid I'll be the one to die. And you guys won't even let out a fart here. In the face of Indra and Abbas's accusations, Fei Ren smiled coldly, as if he had expected it. You. Abbas and Hare's faces froze, as if the other party had hit the nail on the head. They wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. You got a sharp tongue. Do you really think you can fight against all three of our tribes by yourself? With a cold snort, Indra sneered as well. Then, an invisible, murderous aura spread out, as if he wanted to force Fei Ren to submit with his aura. You can try. In the face of Indra's murderous aura, Fei Ren's body was still as straight as a sword. Then, his body shook and emitted a powerful aura fluctuation, dispersing the murderous aura around him. His face was calm. This kid, seeing that his aura did not work on Fei Ren, Indra squinted his eyes, and a trace of surprise flashed across his face. After all, he was an LV1 Martial Spirit Realm expert. Even if it was just a wisp of his aura, it could make experts below LV8 Martial Mentor Realm breathless. They could even kneel down on the spot and be unable to move. However, what Indra did not expect was that his aura was ineffective against Fei Ren, a junior at LV6 Martial Master Realm. At this moment, in front of the Shichuo tribe's troops, everyone, our young friend Fei Ren is a friend of our Shichuo tribe. This old man thinks that this must be a misunderstanding. Zhang Han swept his gaze across the room and saw that the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. It seemed like the crowd was about to start a fight at the slightest disagreement, so he hurriedly tried to dissuade them. The people from the other four tribes might not know about Fei Ren's strength and background, but he was very clear about it. The other party was not only a genius disciple of the 6th grade sect, the Scorching Sun sect, but also extremely powerful in terms of overall strength. He was not someone an ordinary martial artist could contend with. In Zhang Han's heart, he could vaguely sense that even he, a half-step to Martial Spirit Realm expert, might not be a match for Fei Ren. Therefore, he did not wish for the 5 tribes to become enemies with Fei Ren and the Scorching Sun sect behind him. This would not benefit the 5 tribes. Old Zhang, this kid killed Huamuzi. He is a member of our 5 tribes. How dare you defend an outsider? Seeing that Zhang Han had appeared to mediate the situation, the green-clothed elder beside him spoke in a cold tone. It seemed that he had finally found a chance to suppress Fei Run. He could not wait for the other 3 tribes to besiege or even kill him. Second brother, this kid is a genius disciple of the Scorching Sun sect. Seeing that the green-clothed elder was still hostile towards Fei Run, Kublai let out a dry laugh and spoke in a helpless tone. Evidently, he shared the same opinion as Zhang Han and wanted to build a good relationship with Fei Ren. He did not wish for any conflict to break out. The Scorching Sun sect was very famous in the Great Ming Empire. Not only did they have 3 martial spirit realm experts, but they also had many genius disciples under them. Scorching Sun sect. Hearing that, the green-clothed elder's face froze. Then, he looked at Fei Run with a trace of doubt in his eyes. As the second elder of the Shotoa tribe, the green-clothed elder had naturally heard of the Scorching Sun sect. At first, he thought that Fei Run was just a rogue cultivator of unknown origin. He did not expect him to be from the Scorching Sun sect. The Shotoa tribe naturally could not afford to offend such a colossus like the Scorching Sun sect. Misunderstanding? On the other side, after hearing Zhang Han's explanation, the experts from the 5 tribes looked at each other. Clearly, they did not intend to let Fei Ren off so easily. Boom! However, just as everyone was discussing how to deal with Fei Run, an earth-shattering rumble suddenly came from the ground beneath their feet. In the next moment, the golden hall trembled slightly. At the same time, the aura of a massive formation appeared again. It's not that simple. Sensing the aura of a formation that suddenly appeared around the hall, Fei Ren's heart skipped a beat. Just as he had expected, the terracotta army formation that the owner of the ancestral mausoleum, Azir, had set up back then was not that easy to break. Look, what's that? Among the crowd, a cultivator suddenly exclaimed. His voice was filled with disbelief and even a trace of fear. What? Looking in the direction of the voice, everyone's expression changed slightly. Even the higher-ups of the 5 tribes were shocked. In the air, a strange black afterimage floated in the air, emitting an incomparably powerful aura. Around it, the group of terracotta soldiers that had already turned into wreckage reacted once again and began to madly converge towards the black afterimage in the air. Their speed was extremely fast, like water flowing into the sea. Not long after, a gigantic terracotta puppet that was dozens of feet tall and as tall as a 3-story building appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Not only was this terracotta soldier much more powerful than the previous ones, it was comparable to the first level of the martial spirit realm. Furthermore, there was a black light emitting from its eyes as if it had given birth to a trace of intelligence. The armor on its body was also pitch black and shiny. Every move it made shook the heavens and the earth, shocking everyone. Boom! Rumble. Following that, a series of rumbles came from the ground. The remains of the terracotta puppets that were scattered around the Golden Hall gathered together. With the help of the formation's power, they finally turned into 5 gigantic terracotta puppets. Each of the terracotta puppets was comparable to an LV-1 martial spirit realm expert. What a strong death aura! Could it be that the remains of these terracotta puppets have evolved into undead commanders with the help of the formation's power? In the crowd, a rogue cultivator expert with good eyesight exclaimed. He seemed to have noticed the extraordinariness of the 5 terracotta puppets in front of him. The rogue cultivator expert's cultivation was not low. He had reached the half-step to martial spirit realm and was comparable to the higher-ups of the 5 tribes. He was second only to Yinshuayuo. Undead commanders? As soon as the words came out, everyone was stunned. Some of them had a slight change in expression and seemed to know the origin of these puppets. For ordinary puppets, they generally did not have intelligence. However, if there was an external force that could absorb a large amount of death aura, there was a chance for them to evolve into undead commanders. As for the Death Spirit Commander, as its name implied, it was a type of puppet that possessed a weak intelligence. At the same time, it possessed extremely powerful strength. Moreover, due to the dense aura of death mixed within its body, the Death Spirit Commander's defensive and healing abilities were extremely strong as well. It was difficult to destroy it easily. Chapter 460. An Undead Spirit Commander strength was comparable to a LV-1 Martial Spirit Realm expert. It was very difficult to deal with. On the other hand, there were a total of 5 undead commanders that had appeared before them. Obviously, this was the real Terracotta Army formation. As for the hundreds of Terracotta Army puppets, they were just a cover. Right now, if everyone wanted to enter the palace ruins, they had to deal with the 5 undead spirit commanders. They are undead spirit commanders. In front of the Polo tribe's team, Indra's face was solemn. For him, dealing with one undead spirit commander was not too difficult. However, there were 5 undead spirit commanders in front of the Golden Hall. 5 undead spirit commanders. It seems that if we don't deal with them, we won't be able to enter the palace ruins. Looking at the aggressive and huge undead spirit commanders in front of them, a group of martial artists and rogue cultivators had a lingering fear in their hearts. After all, the 5 undead spirit commanders were comparable to LV-1 martial spirit realm experts. Even if anyone present was no match for them, they would only have a chance to defeat them if they worked together. Everyone, although these undead spirit commanders are not weak, if we work together, there's nothing to be afraid of. Looking around and seeing that everyone had different expressions, Indra said in a deep voice. In his eyes, entering the ruins of the royal palace to look for treasures and opportunities was the most important thing. As for whether or not he would deal with Fei Run, this outsider, it wasn't that important at this moment. After all, the dead Huamuzi was a member of the Dali tribe and not a member of the Paluo tribe. Moreover, although the undead spirit commanders were not weak, in the face of the great temptation of the palace ruins treasure, although everyone present was afraid, no one was willing to leave. Obviously, they were not willing to return empty-handed. After all, people die for wealth and birds die for food. For the martial artists present, entering the ancestral mausoleum to explore was to seek wealth in danger. I agree. As soon as Indra's voice fell, Coke also responded with a dignified expression. Although Fei Run had killed Huamuzi, causing the people from the 5 major tribes to be extremely unhappy, Huamuzi's life was obviously worthless in front of the treasures of the Imperial Palace ruins. So what if he died? Right now, if they had the time to suppress Fei Run, they might as well think about how to deal with the undead commanders in front of them. At the same time, they would kill their way into the Golden Hall and seize the treasures. Fortunately, their attention is completely focused on those undead spirit commanders. Otherwise, this old man might not be able to protect you. On the other hand, Zhang Han heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Indra and Coke had given up on targeting Fei Run. Thank you, Great Elder, for speaking up for me. But even without the undead spirit commander, I'm not afraid of this group of people, Fei Run grinned and said. He wasn't bragging. Even if the masters of the 3 tribes besieged him, they might not be able to kill him. Moreover, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. With Fei Ren's current strength, if the people of the 3 tribes dared to attack him, he had the confidence to make them regret it for the rest of their lives. At least this kid managed to escape. On the side, seeing that everyone's attention was attracted by the aggressive undead spirit commander, the green-robed old man narrowed his eyes. Originally, the people of the 3 tribes had planned to join forces to deal with Fei Run and seek an explanation for the death of Hormuzi. But now, the sudden appearance of the undead spirit commander had disrupted their plans. In front of the Golden Hall, on the other side, Patriarch, that kid killed Hormuzi. Are we just going to let this go? I'm not willing to accept this. Seeing the sudden change in the direction of the wind, allowing Fei Run to escape, several masters of the Dali tribe were also filled with righteous indignation. They all looked at a boss in front of them. To them, the dead Hormuzi was an expert of the Dali tribe, and Fei Run killing him was tantamount to declaring war on their Dali tribe. Naturally, They couldn't let him go so easily. How can we let this little bastard go? Facing his subordinate's suggestion, Abbas also clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Fei Run. However, he was also very calm and did not directly attack. After all, what Indra and the others said was true. The sudden appearance of a few undead spirit commanders was the main point. If they didn't deal with these undead spirit commanders, they could only guard outside and not enter the Golden Hall. Wait until we kill our way into the ruins of the palace and obtain the treasures and opportunities. Then, we'll take our time to deal with this kid. At that time, I'll definitely tear him into pieces. Avenge Hormusi. Glancing at his subordinates around him, Abbas said fiercely in the next moment, his face cold and emotionless. Although Fei Run was not weak and had killed Hormusi, who was at the 8th level of the Martial Master Realm, with a single punch, Abbas was a half-step to the Martial Spirit Realm expert and the current patriarch of the Dali tribe. He was confident in killing Fei Run. Yes, patriarch. Facing Abbas's statement, the few experts of the Dali tribe looked at each other and said fiercely. They had already listed Fei Run as their mortal enemy. Boom. Just as everyone was about to join forces, the undead spirit commanders, who had been standing quietly on the spot, made their moves. They immediately pounced towards everyone with imposing auras. At the same time, they brought along a wave of rumbling thunder that shook the heavens and the earth. Although there were thousands of warriors gathered outside the ruins of the palace, it was still difficult for them to kill their way into the ruins of the palace in the face of 5 undead spirit commanders, who were comparable to the first level of the martial spirit realm. If they were not careful, they would lose their lives. Bang! Boom! In midair, a black shadow whizzed past. The next moment, one of the undead spirit commanders landed on the ground. At the same time, it swept out a punch, and a huge fist went straight into the crowd. The fist landed on the ground. Facing the attack of the undead spirit commanders, more than a dozen rogue cultivators who did not have time to dodge screamed and died instantly, turning into a pile of flesh on the spot. Among these rogue cultivators who died, most of them were above the 6th level of the Martial Master Realm. There was even a 9th level Martial Master Realm expert. However, it was still difficult for them to resist the attack of the undead spirit commanders. So ruthless. Seeing this scene, Fei Rin's eyelids twitched. Compared to how quickly they killed people, the undead spirit commanders in front of him were clearly more efficient than him. A casual punch could kill dozens of people. Go! The treasure is right in front of us. Facing the attack of the undead spirit commanders, the people present were naturally unwilling to sit still and wait for death. They immediately shot out one after another. Not long after, the 5 undead spirit commanders were fighting with the people present. Blood splattered everywhere, and the remaining power of the origin energy scattered in all directions. From time to time, there would be martial warriors screaming and falling down, turning into cold corpses, or being crushed by the undead spirit commanders, causing blood to flow everywhere. Boom! In the midst of the fierce battle, a black sword light whistled through the air and heavily struck the left leg of an undead spirit commander, instantly piercing through it. Bam! The huge figure heavily fell to the ground, shaking up a cloud of dust. However, in the next moment, the undead spirit commander slowly stood up again, his eyes emitting a dense black light, as if he was not affected in the slightest. What? This guy can't be killed. What the hell is this thing? After landing in the sky, Du Qing's face was filled with bewilderment. At this moment, he was holding a black, iron-heavy sword in his hand. At the same time, his gaze fell on the body of an undead spirit commander below. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The power of his previous sword strike was enough to kill an expert at the 1st level of the martial spirit realm. However, it was unable to do anything to the undead spirit commander in front of him. Even though his sword had pierced through the opponent's left leg, the undead spirit commander could still stand up. Chapter 461. As the chief of the Xia Emperor tribe, Du Qing's strength was not weak. He was comparable to a true first-level martial spirit realm expert. However, with just his strength alone, he was still unable to do anything to the undead spirit commander in front of him. Everyone of the Xia Emperor tribe, listen up. Attack together and get rid of this bastard. The black iron heavy sword in his hand slashed out again. In the next moment, Du Qing also shouted out. The yuan power around his body increased again, and a powerful sword intent immediately spread out. Sword intent complete. Not far away, seeing Du Qing's strength increase again, Fei Run, who was also in a chaotic battle, was slightly surprised. Not only did the other party have a half-step martial spirit realm yuan power cultivation, he had also comprehended sword intent. His sword intent had even reached the complete level. For a sword cultivator, the complete level of sword intent could not only greatly increase their attack power, but could also greatly increase their sword martial arts. Even the sword cultivator genius who had met Fei Run before, the #1 newcomer of the Scorching Sun sect, Gao Yunshun, had only reached the complete level of sword intent. This person is the chief of the Xia Emperor tribe. It's not strange for him to have such strength. On second thought, Fei Run let out a light sigh and secretly pushed his abdomen. Looks like the Martial King Realm's inheritance is not easy to obtain. He knew that even someone as strong as Du Qing was not a match for the chief of the Paluo tribe, Indra Luo. It would not be easy to obtain the treasure from an army of tens of thousands. Boom! Another loud explosion sounded out. With the support of the experts of the Xia Emperor tribe, the undead spirit commander that was fighting with Du Qing was also retreating. The dense death aura on his body was also gradually decreasing. Chief, this guy is almost finished. A few more elemental energy attacks cut through the air, and then heavily smashed onto the chest of the undead spirit commander. In an instant, the armor shattered, and the originally incomparably huge undead spirit commander fell down once again, causing everyone's faces to be filled with joy. After a chaotic battle, everyone had more or less seen through the secrets and weaknesses of the undead spirit commanders. Although the other party was an undying ghost, the death aura on his body was limited. Every time he fell or was heavily injured, the death aura on his body would decrease. When the death aura completely disappeared, these ghosts would collapse without a fight. Continue. Charge in. With a cold snort, Du Qing's fighting spirit soared when he saw that the death spirit commander in front of him was gradually declining. The black metal heavy sword in his hand slashed out diagonally, and countless sharp black sword glows swept out. They were like a storm as they directly landed on the death spirit commander opposite him. Boom! Rumble! The black sword light was like a hot knife through butter. It instantly pierced through the undead commander's defense, causing its left hand and right leg to break and turn into dust. Boom! After losing the support of its body, the undead commander let out a snarl and collapsed to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Although the undead commander could rely on the death aura on his body to recover infinitely and remain undefeated in battle, this death aura was ultimately limited. Furthermore, the black metal heavy sword in the hands of the Xia tribe's chief, Du Qing, was no ordinary numinous treasure. It had a powerful background, and, at the same time, its power was astonishing. This black metal heavy sword was 33 feet long, and its blade was as black as ink. At the same time, its back flashed with a cold light. It could cut through gold and stone, and cut through iron like mud. It was the Juk sword, ranked 72nd in the numinous sword chart. Although the Juk sword's ranking in the numinous sword chart was lower than the Shangyang sword, in terms of pure destructive power, it was not inferior to the Shangyang sword in Gao Yunshin's hands. Juk sword? I didn't expect this guy to have such a numinous sword. Looking at Du Qing, who was not far away, Fei Run narrowed his eyes. He had naturally heard of the Juk sword's reputation. This sword was the same as the Shangyang sword in Gao Yunshin's hands. They were both famous numinous swords in the numinous sword chart. Even the grade 5 numinous treasure green dragon halberd in his hands was slightly inferior to Du Qing's Juk sword in terms of pure destructive power. Looks like the battle is about to end. I have to find a chance to kill my way into the palace. Fei Ren thought to himself as his figure flashed, and he once again dodged the undead commander's attack range. As the experts of the 5 great tribes had attracted most of the firepower, Fei Ren did not feel much pressure in the face of the undead commander's attacks. He merely slacked off in the chaotic battle and conserved his origin power. He did not take the initiative to attack. To him, killing his way into the Golden Palace was his priority. As for the undead commanders blocking his way, the experts of the 5 great tribes would naturally deal with them. Another incense-stick's worth of time passed. Under the combined attacks of Du Qing and the experts of the Sha Emperor tribe, the undead commander before him finally reached its limit. Its huge body collapsed with a loud bang. Then it stopped moving. It was as if the death chi on its body had been exhausted. It was reduced to a pile of scrap metal. Kill your way in. Du Qing withdrew the Juk sword on his back. Without the obstruction of this undead commander, Du Qing's figure shot out in the next instant and disappeared into the Golden Palace. The experts of the Sha Emperor tribe followed closely behind him. At the same time, the chaotic battle outside the palace was still intense. Although Du Qing and the others had exhausted one of the undead commanders to death, there were still 4 undead commanders left. They were still a force that could not be underestimated. Moreover, these 4 undead commanders were clearly acting according to the will of the formation. They intended to stop the warriors from entering the Golden Palace. They would not rest until they were dead. Even Du Qing and the others who had already killed their way into the palace were mostly injured. Other than Du Qing himself, many of his subordinates had also been slapped to death by the other undead commanders, unable to successfully enter the palace. How are the casualties? Inside the Golden Palace, Du Qing's face was gloomy as he turned around to look at a Sha Emperor tribe expert behind him. Reporting to tribe leader, 7 people have died and 4 are injured. Right now, we only have 9 people who can still fight. As his voice fell, the Sha Emperor tribe expert also replied. His tone was filled with fear and trepidation, as if he was afraid that the other party would blame him. Damn it, half of them are dead. Hearing this, Du Qing's face sank and immediately turned ugly. This time, in order to enter the ancestral mausoleum, he had brought a total of more than 20 experts from the tribe. These experts were all above LV 5 Martial Master Realm. Now that they had lost more than half of their men before they had found much of the treasure, he naturally felt very pained. Let's go. The treasure is more important. In the next moment, Du Qing's figure flashed and rushed into the depths of the palace. Although they had lost many men this time, it was all worth it. Now, their Sha Emperor tribe was the first to enter the Golden Palace. At the same time, they had a better chance of obtaining the opportunity and treasure left behind by Azir. Outside the Golden Palace, in the chaotic battle, an old figure flew out in a sorry state and landed on an empty ground. The old figure's Yuan power aura was somewhat unstable. It was the tribe leader of the Barkshi tribe. Moreover, unlike Du Qing and the others, he was somewhat unlucky to be targeted by 2 undead commanders at once. Even with the support of his subordinates, he was still in a difficult battle. After all, 2 undead commanders were 2 LV-1 martial spirit realm experts. They were not easy to deal with. Damn it! I'll let you undead have a taste of the power of the 5 Thunder Demon subduing talisman. Looking at the stubborn undead commanders in front of him, a trace of viciousness flashed across Hare's wrinkled old face. Then he flipped his hand and instantly took out a mysterious sky blue talisman from his spirit ring. Chapter 462. The sky blue spiritual talisman was densely covered with runes. At the same time, it emitted wisps of imperceptible lightning aura. It was extraordinary and seemed to be of a high rank. 5 lightning demon subduing talisman. Not far away, Abbas and Indra, who were also engaged in a fierce battle, were surprised. Apparently, they also recognized the extraordinary spiritual talisman in the opponent's hand. Coke, this old guy is really willing to spend a lot of money. The corner of Indra's mouth curled up slightly. At this moment, he also blasted out a palm in the air. In an instant, he forced an attacking undead spirit commander back with a playful expression. As the only martial spirit realm expert in the 5 major tribes, his strength was naturally superior. Even without the support of the Paluo tribe's experts, Indra could easily deal with the undead spirit commander in front of him. As for defeating the opponent, it was only a matter of time. After all, the death aura on these undead spirit commanders was limited. Even if they were undying ghosts, once the death aura was exhausted, they would turn into scrap metal. Puppets were just puppets after all. Therefore, Indra himself was not in a hurry to use his trump card. Die. As soon as the spiritual talisman appeared, thunder roared. 5 lightning annihilation. Coke threw the spiritual talisman in his hand. In the next moment, a large amount of origin energy poured into it. With the influx of origin energy, the 5 lightning demon subduing talisman in his hand fully displayed its power. In an instant, 5 terrifying lightning snakes burst out. Hiss! Boom! In an instant, the lightning snakes roared and swept out. In the next moment, they attacked the 2 undead spirit commanders in front of him. They were unstoppable. As the chief of the Barkshi tribe, in addition to his own strength, Coke also had a lot of treasures and trump cards. As for the 5 Thunders demon subduing talisman in his hand, it was an authentic high-level talisman. A high-rank spiritual talisman was usually made by a high-rank spiritual talisman master. Its power was far greater than a middle-rank spiritual talisman. It was enough to kill a martial spirit realm expert. Compared to the raging fire talisman that Fei Run obtained from the Bone Sect's Elder Wang Jia, the 5 lightning demon subduing talisman in Coke's hand was naturally several times more powerful. In addition, a high-rank spiritual talisman was one of the treasures that were priceless. After all, a spiritual talisman master who could make a high-rank spiritual talisman was very strict with the strength of his mental strength. His mental strength was at least in the 6th profound martial realm, comparable to a 6th grade alchemist. It's actually a high-grade talisman. This old man is really rich. Not far away, Fei Ren was also slightly surprised when he saw Hull fighting 2 undead commanders by himself and flashing a high-level talisman. In his opinion, the people of the 5 major tribes were all barbarian tribesmen who lived in the depths of the Katar Desert. Most of the treasures in their hands were rare minerals, and they rarely had anything else. However, today's Coke had broken Fei Ren's understanding. He had never imagined that Coke would actually possess a rare high-grade talisman. Boom! Lightning snakes appeared, and the wind and clouds moved. Although the strength of these 2 undead commanders was extraordinary, it was still difficult for them to resist the terrifying power of the 5 lightning demon subduing talisman. They fell down one after another. Their originally huge bodies were corroded by the terrifying power of the lightning serpents and were instantly damaged beyond repair. Die. After using a high-level talisman, Hull also took advantage of the opportunity to pursue. His offensive did not decrease. He once again blasted out a light blue yuan power ribbon in the air. It was like a hurricane whistling, and it cut off the head of one of the undead commanders, causing its death aura to greatly reduce. Is that old guy Hull in a hurry? He's going all out. Not far away, a boss, who was also fighting fiercely with an undead commander, twitched his eyelids. Although he also wanted to get rid of the undead commander in front of him as soon as possible and then kill his way into the Golden Hall, he was not as crazy and impatient as Hull. Although Abbas also had some trump cards in his hands, he did not want to waste them on the undead commander in front of him. After all, under the cover of a group of masters from the Dali tribe, he still had a good chance to kill the undead commander in front of him. It would just take a little more time. A few minutes later, under Hull's continuous fierce attacks, the 2 undead commanders were finally unable to resist. The death aura on their bodies sharply reduced, and they fell to the ground, unable to move. The wisp of intelligence in their eyes had also completely disappeared. "Follow me into the hall." At this time, after killing the two undead commanders, Hull stroked his long beard and then snorted coldly. His figure landed on the golden hall not far away. If it were not for the sake of entering the hall earlier to compete for the treasures, he would not have wasted this 5 lightning demon subduing talisman. This talisman was obtained by him in the early years from a trade with a warrior from the outside world. It was very precious, and there was only one of it. Yes, Patriarch. Behind him, a group of surviving masters from the Bark-She tribe also cupped their hands and accepted the order. They withdrew from the battle and followed closely behind. Boom! Rumble! Just as Hull and the others killed their way into the hall, Indra, Abbas, and the others on the other side had also successfully dealt with the undead commanders blocking their way and rushed toward the hall. At this point, the 5 powerful undead spirit commanders had all died under the siege of the crowd. Although after a fierce battle, the 5 tribes and the rogue cultivators also suffered a lot of losses, there were at least hundreds of warriors present who survived. "Faerun boy, hurry up!" At this time, seeing that the undead commanders blocking their way had all been dealt with, Zhang Han and the others immediately seized the opportunity and rushed toward the Golden Hall. Kill! The next moment, the group of cultivators and rogue cultivators who were still lingering outside the hall were also stimulated and rushed to the Golden Hall not far away one after another. All of them looked greedy and crazy, as if the treasure was right in front of them. "Senior Grand Elder, I'll be there in a moment." Although everyone was in a hurry to kill their way into the Golden Hall and obtain the treasures within, Faerun was not in a hurry. This was because just a moment ago, the refining divine Cauldron in his body throbbed again. In Faerun's impression, there were very few treasures that could cause a reaction from the refining divine Cauldron. Only rare treasures could cause a reaction from the refining divine Cauldron. Therefore, he was in no hurry to enter the hall. He wanted to wait a little longer. What is this boy trying to do now? Seeing that Faerun did not immediately follow the others into the hall, Kublai was slightly stunned. After all, if he was one step late, he would be forever behind. If he was even a moment late, he might not be able to obtain the treasures. "Third brother, don't bother about this boy. As long as we can obtain the treasures left behind by His Majesty Azir, our Shichuo tribe will definitely rise." Seeing Kublai's actions, the green-robed old man said coldly with a hint of disdain in his voice. After all, in his eyes, even if Faerun was a genius disciple of the Scorching Sun sect, he was still an outsider who had nothing to do with the Shichuo tribe. "Let's go." Seeing this, Kublai's expression was a little helpless. He ignored them and followed behind the green-robed old man and Zhang Han, entering the Golden Hall. Not long after, the surroundings of the hall returned to silence. At this moment, there was only a mess and blood-stained corpses. There was not a single person, and the atmosphere was tragic. Swoosh! Faerun's figure passed through the ruins, and in the next moment, he slowly landed in front of the broken body of a death spirit commander. Whoosh! Faerun reached out with his left hand and took out a black crystal the size of a baby's fist from the death spirit commander's body. "Ha ha! I didn't expect it to really be a death spirit crystal. I'm going to be rich this time." Holding the black crystal tightly in his hand, Faerun's eyes narrowed as he laughed towards the sky. He was overjoyed. Chapter 463. The black crystal was diamond-shaped. Although it wasn't big, wisps of fine black shadows could be faintly seen within it. They were like dragons soaring and dancing, and they seemed to be emitting strands of dense aura of death. It was very strange. Dead spiritual crystal. When he was in the Scorching Sun sect, Faerun was lucky to learn about the extraordinary features of this item from an ancient book. The dead spiritual crystal was different from ordinary primordial stones and treasures. It contained a large amount of death aura and could be used to cultivate puppets or even zombies. At the same time, The effect was several times better than refining the blood essence of demonic beasts or martial artists. In addition, the conditions for the birth of a dead spiritual crystal were very harsh. It required a large amount of death aura and a long period of precipitation. Generally speaking, the place where the dead spiritual crystal could be born was a large mass grave or a fierce battle between hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. Blood stained the sky and corpses were everywhere. Only then could a strong death aura be produced and a unique dead spiritual crystal could be born. In Fei Rin's childhood memory, he had heard from some storytellers that when the Dachu dynasty was just established, under the lead of the late emperor, a fierce battle broke out with a strong enemy in the north, Dongling province. For a time, there were countless casualties. It was like a meat grinder. Only a battle of this level could produce a dead spiritual crystal, and it was not a 100% success rate. A fierce battle of this level was rarely seen in decades. It was enough to show the preciousness of the dead spiritual crystal in Fei Rin's hand. Today, he could pick up a dead spiritual crystal for free. It was simply incredible luck. Good stuff. After putting the dead spiritual crystal into the spiritual ring, Fei Rin took a deep breath. For ordinary martial artists, although the dead spiritual crystal was precious, its effect was not obvious. It was like a chicken rib. However, Fei Rin was different. He had a LV6 Martial Mentor Realm skeleton puppet. Now, he could absorb the rich death aura in the dead spiritual crystal and greatly enhance the strength of puppet Xiao Bai. It could even make Xiao Bai evolve again. Apart from that, the dead spirit crystal was also a rare treasure for those who practiced the puppet technique or even the corpse refining technique. Just like the dark corpse Taoist who was chased by Fei Rin, if he could obtain a dead spirit crystal, his strength would increase greatly. He could even refine a mummy that was not weaker than a martial spirit realm cultivator. If Fei Rin wanted to get rid of him, it wouldn't be that easy. The reaction of the divine immortal cauldron hasn't dissipated yet. Could it be that there's more than one dead spirit crystal here? With a slightly surprised expression, Fei Rin sensed waves of throbbing in his dantian. He did not dare to be negligent and immediately flew out, flying in the direction of the other undead commander corpses. Presently, the 5 Spectre commanders had already been defeated by the joint forces of everyone, and they'd been reduced to a pile of scrap metal. Including the experts of the 5 tribes, almost everyone's attention was focused on the Golden Hall and the treasures. No one paid any attention to Fei Rin, who was still shuttling back and forth in the periphery. The dead spirit crystal in his hand was taken from the head of an undead commander. It seemed to be the core of its power, and the reason why these undead commanders were able to maintain their fighting strength for a long time and emit a dense aura of death at the same time was most likely related to the dead spirit crystal. If Fei Rin was not wrong, there were other dead spirit crystals here, and it was very likely that there was more than one. After another quarter of an hour, he landed and arrived in front of the remains of another undead commander. There's more. Raising his hand to circulate his origin energy, he destroyed the head of the undead commander with a palm strike. In the next moment, Fei Rin took out a pitch-black dead spirit crystal with a happy expression. Just as he thought, there was more than one dead spirit crystal. In the head of this undead commander, he found another one. After plundering all the corpses of the undead commanders, Fei Rin also found a total of 3 dead spirit crystals. It's a pity that I only found 3. Otherwise, with the dense aura of death within these dead spirit crystals, Puppet White E's strength might be able to try to break through to the martial spirit realm. At that time, I'll have another powerful helper. A trace of regret appeared on Fei Rin's face. Although he had only found 3 dead spirit crystals, it was still acceptable. There were a total of 5 undead commander corpses at the scene. To be able to find 3 dead spirit crystals, the probability of finding more than 60% was already within his expectations. Currently, Puppet White E's strength was around the 6th level martial master realm. With its first-rate movement speed and sharp bone blades, its overall combat strength was not inferior to a level 8 martial master realm expert. According to Fei Ren's estimation, if it absorbed 3 dead spirit crystals, Puppet White E's strength would at least be around the 9th level martial master realm. Time waits for no man. Let's do it. Soon, Fei Ren summoned Puppet Whitey from the spirit ring. At the same time, he threw out all 3 dead spirit crystals in his hand. Walala! Under the shower of a large amount of death aura, Puppet Whitey's bones became more and more lustrous. Flesh and blood began to appear on its calves and hands, as if it was gradually evolving into a humanoid puppet. At the same time, its aura soared, as if it was not far from giving birth to true intelligence. 9th level martial master realm. Not long after absorbing 3 dead spirit crystals, Puppet Whitey's strength had also stepped into the 9th level martial master realm as it wished. Its strength had greatly increased. If Whitey can give birth to intelligence, its significance will not be inferior to that of a natal demon pet. Moreover, its value will be even greater. Sizing up Puppet Whitey in front of him, Fei Ren secretly pondered. After all, puppets could be repaired. If they gave birth to intelligence, their strength would be even stronger. As for the demon pet, if it died, it would be difficult to revive it. Moreover, it was different from the mummies in the hands of the Een Corpse Taoist and some ordinary puppets. When Fei Ren obtained Puppet Whitey from the White Bone Elder, he felt that the puppet's quality was excellent and that it was worth cultivating. Now that he saw the changes in Puppet Whitey, Fei Ren was even more certain of his judgment. It's time to enter the hall. After putting Puppet Whitey back into the spirit ring, Fei Ren also flew towards the Golden Hall. Inside the Golden Hall, the atmosphere was solemn and anxious. Little B asterisk starred. Where do you think you're going? Just as Fei Ren's figure stepped into the hall, a cold and sinister laugh came from afar. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Then there's a flash of figures and dozens of powerful primary power auras also attacked for both sides. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man in a beast robe. It was the chief of the Dali tribe, a boss. You're the chief of the Dali tribe? Looking at the group of tribal experts blocking the way in front of him, as well as the leader, a boss, Fei Ren's eyes narrowed slightly. The other party was the current chief of the Dali tribe. Hormusi, who had died in his hands, was one of his subordinates. Fei Ren was not stupid. Looking at the other party's aggressive posture, it was obvious that he was here for revenge. That's right. Little B asterisk starred. The Dali tribe is not something that A B asterisk starred like you can provoke. Sweeping his gaze, the next moment, a boss's vulture eyes also burst out with endless killing intent. If looks could kill, Fei Ren would have died several times over. A good dog doesn't block the way. However, in the face of a boss's threat, the corners of Fei Ren's mouth rose, and then he revealed a cold smile. Originally, he did not want to be enemies with the Dali tribe, but the other party wanted to kill him, so he could only kill. Chapter 464. Little B asterisk starred, go to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, a boss was furious. In the next moment, he shot out and threw a punch at Fei Ren's abdomen. Spiritual Tiger descends the mountain. Boom! A large amount of origin energy swept out and turned into a gray fist force. The shadow of a tiger's roar could be vaguely seen, which was daunting. The totem of the Dali tribe was a type of spirit tiger, a symbol of power and authority. Every generation's chief would cultivate a kind of martial art that imitated the habits of the spirit tiger. As for a boss, the chief of the Dali tribe, he was no exception. As the chief of the Dali tribe, a boss origin energy cultivation had reached the half-step to martial spirit realm. Although the spiritual tiger descends the mountain was only a 5th-grade martial arts technique, its power was enough to annihilate any warrior below the half-step to martial spirit realm. However, Fei Ren was not an ordinary warrior. Good timing. In the face of a boss violent attack, Fei Ren also let out a long roar and faced it head-on. A large amount of golden origin energy spread out and affected the hall. Dharma Fist. With a punch, the shadow of the Dharma Golden Buddha appeared. In an instant, golden light shot out in all directions. A roaring golden dragon swept out and headed straight for a boss, who was not far away. Boom! In an instant, the gray fist force fiercely collided with the huge golden dragon formed from yuan energy. The two different yuan energy entangled endlessly before finally exploding. The aftershock spread in all directions, causing dust to roll in all directions. Ah! Ah! Suddenly, a few screams were heard. In the next moment, the golden dragon swept its tail and annihilated the gray fist force. At the same time, the aftershock did not diminish. It swept toward the surrounding experts of the Dali tribe. Then, two experts of the Dali tribe fell down. Blood splattered on the spot, and they turned into cold corpses. As for the other experts of the Dali tribe, they were all injured and retreated to the back. They seemed to have been affected by the aftershock of Fei Ren's punch. What? Seeing that Fei Ren had countered his attack with a casual strike, and even killed two experts from the Dali tribe, Abbas's expression changed slightly, his face filled with shock. After all, his opponent was only at the 6th level of the Martial Master Realm, while he was a half-step to the Martial Spirit Realm expert. There was a huge gap between their realms. Attack together. With a roar, Abbas charged out again. He raised his hand and blasted out several tiger phantoms. His expression was grave. Kill. Immediately after, the surviving masters of the Dali tribe looked at each other, and then each took out their own spiritual treasures and weapons and attacked Fei Ren. For a time, Yuan Li shot out in all directions, and countless attacks fell directly on Fei Ren. Boom! Rumble! Under the gazes of the crowd, countless Yuan power attacks engulfed Fei Ren's figure. Little bastard, no matter how strong you are, you will die without a doubt. Seeing that Fei Ren's figure was engulfed by a large amount of Yuan Li attacks, a trace of viciousness and cruelty flashed across Abbas's face as he roared in his heart. In his opinion, even if the other party had the strength to contend with a half-step to the martial spirit realm and was a martial arts genius, he would definitely not be able to fight against many. After all, the masters of the Dali tribe under him were all above the 6th level of the Martial Master Realm. After a few breaths, "Is this kid dead?" The dust gradually dissipated, and Fei Ren's figure did not appear. In the next moment, an expert of the Dali tribe exclaimed in a low voice, "No! Danger!" However, before he could finish his sentence, Abbas's expression changed slightly, and he turned his head to look behind him. Too late. A cold man's voice sounded in his ears. In the next moment, Fei Ren's fist heavily imprinted on Abbas's back. Suddenly, golden Yuan Li swept out, and a powerful Yuan Li fluctuation erupted, instantly sending Abbas flying. Pucci! After taking Fei Ren's punch on his back, Abbas's face turned red, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He retreated like a kite with a broken string, and finally smashed into a huge pillar in the hall before stopping. Patriarch, seeing that Abbas was knocked back by Fei Ren's punch and was vomiting blood, the expressions of the experts of the tribe changed drastically, and they immediately stepped forward. What kind of monster is this kid? At this moment, everyone looked at Fei Ren with fear in their eyes. As for Abbas, his face was pale, and his expression was uncertain, as if he regretted taking the initiative to provoke Fei Ren. What a powerful strength! Who the hell is he? A strong sense of fear emerged in his heart. With the help of a few of his subordinates, Abbas struggled to get up from the ground. However, his Yuan Li fluctuation had decreased sharply, and he was no longer as imposing as before. The power of Fei Ren's punch was strong enough to kill any half-step martial spirit realm expert. Although Abbas did not die after taking the punch, he was severely injured. At this moment, his combat strength was greatly reduced, and he could not compete with Fei Ren. Swoosh! A figure flew out and landed on the ground. At this moment, Fei Ren's body was shining with a scarlet golden light, and there was a red in the middle of his forehead. At the same time, the majestic golden Buddha behind him was particularly eye-catching, and it was emitting a heart-palpitating Yuan Li fluctuation. Not dead? Glancing at the weak Abbas, Faerun raised his eyebrows slightly. With his current cultivation base and the Dharma Golden Buddha body, no one below the martial spirit realm would be able to block his punch. However, Abbas had unexpectedly managed to escape with his life. As expected of a chief of one of the 5 major tribes. "You have some skills." Collecting his thoughts, Faerun's eyes revealed a hint of killing intent. He did not use his full strength in the previous punch, only 70% of his strength. If he had used his full strength, Abbas would not have been able to block it, even if he used all his skills. "Chief, what should we do?" Seeing the killing intent on Faerun's body, the few surviving experts of the Dali tribe panicked and looked at Abbas at the side. After all, the other party was a half-step martial spirit realm expert. If even Abbas could not do anything to Faerun, they could not escape either. Only death awaited them. Swoosh! Glancing around, Abbas's face was as gloomy as stagnant water. The next moment, he turned around and flew out of the hall, as if he wanted to leave everyone behind and escape alone. "Can you escape?" Seeing that Abbas was about to turn around and escape, Faerun also attacked. He was just as fast and instantly stopped the other party. Since he had already become enemies with the Dali tribe, he naturally would not let Abbas and the others escape. "Kid, if you kill me, you will become enemies with the 5 major tribes. You won't live either. Also, the Dali tribe will not let you go." In the face of death, Abbas's face changed drastically. He then shouted in anger, as if he wanted to use the 5 major tribes as a bargaining chip to threaten Faerun. It doesn't matter. The corners of Faerun's mouth curled up as he ignored Abbas' clamor. In the next moment, he threw out a punch. Golden Yuan power swept out and instantly penetrated Abbas' chest. Blood splattered as Abbas' heart meridian was completely crushed. Ugh! Abbas's eyes suddenly widened. Before he could even let out a scream, his body fell limply to the ground, completely devoid of any signs of life. At this point, the chief of the Dali tribe, one of the 5 major tribes, had fallen and became a corpse at Faerun's feet. Chapter 465. Those who kill will always be killed. After dealing with Abbas, Faerun did not let go of the few surviving experts of the Dali tribe. After all, it was impossible for him to release a tiger back in the mountains to avoid endless trouble. Swoosh! With a flick of his finger, several streaks of golden yuan power shot out from between Faerun's fingers. Soon after, they transformed into sharp blades with an imposing aura. With a few screams, the surviving experts of the Dali tribe fell to the ground and died. They had no power to resist. Their hearts were pierced by the origin power blades on the spot, and blood flowed like a river. Swoosh! Faerun summoned the divine, refining cauldron. Naturally, he would not let go of the corpses of the Dali tribe warriors. He immediately activated the refining power of the divine cauldron and began to absorb the remaining life essence. After a few breaths, the life essence of Abbas and the others were all absorbed by Faerun and turned into pure origin power. At the same time, his origin power cultivation increased slightly. He was less than 1/5 away from the next breakthrough. Now, it seems that one of the 5 major tribes is crippled. It won't be able to recover in a few decades. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. Glancing at Abbas's corpse on the ground, Faerun shook his head and sneered. Then, he kept the divine refining cauldron and continued to walk into the depths of the hall. This time, Abbas led almost all the elites of the Dali tribe into the ancestral mausoleum. Now, they were all wiped out by Faerun. Even Abbas himself was dead. For the Dali tribe, it was a fatal blow. Compared to the Dali tribe, only the 4th elder, Timur, died in the Shotoa tribe. They were very lucky. In addition, before leaving, Faerun also took the spirit rings from Abbas and the others and put them in his bag. He had made a small fortune. In the hall, the flames of war were everywhere. The smell of blood and origin power waves were everywhere. From time to time, someone would scream and fall to the ground, turning into a corpse. It was extremely tragic. For the group of warriors, the hall in front of them was a huge treasure trove. It was inevitable that a fight would break out, and it was the truth. So tragic, Fei Ren's figure flashed, and he was slightly stunned. What appeared before his eyes was a scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Battles were erupting everywhere, and the entire hall was a mess. Countless yuan stones, medicinal herbs, and demon cores were left uncollected, or it could be said that they could not be collected at all. Some of the yuan stones were even covered by corpses, emitting a pungent smell of blood. As an almighty martial king in the past, the treasures left behind by Azir were enormous. Origin stones were piled up like a mountain, taking up almost a third of the hall. Apart from that, there were also large amounts of medicinal herbs and demon cores stored in the hall, as well as various strange treasures. With a quick glance, Fei Ren roughly determined that there were at least tens of millions of origin stones piled up in the hall. Among them, there were quite a number of high-quality mid-grade primordial stones. Hundreds of thousands of them were a conservative estimate. Moreover, this was only the number of primordial stones. At this moment, there were countless medicinal herbs, magic cores, and other treasures in the hall. Therefore, it was not difficult to imagine why the warriors present would go crazily killing and plundering, and the scene fell into a chaotic battle. Although there were many treasures present, all of them could only be obtained with their lives. Apart from a small number of cultivators who were able to keep the treasures in their hands, the majority of cultivators were besieged by the crowd and died tragically before they could even warm the treasures in their hands. This was also why there were a large number of yuan stones, medicinal herbs, and demon cores scattered on the ground. It was not that no one wanted to pick them up, but that no one was alive to pick them up. Every warrior who intended to fish in troubled waters would be besieged and killed by the surrounding warriors, except for a small number of people who could escape. It's a waste if no one picks them up. With a glance, he saw that there was fighting everywhere, and no one was paying attention to him. Fei Ren also began to plunder the scattered treasures on the scene. Die. At this moment, a level 8 Martial Master Realm rogue cultivator suddenly pounced on Fei Ren. At the same time, he waved the large saber in his hand. He seemed to be in a killing frenzy. When he saw Fei Ren picking up the scattered yuan stones, medicinal herbs, and magic cores on the ground, he intended to stop him. Get lost. In the face of the sudden attack, Fei Ren narrowed his eyes. Then, he raised his foot and kicked the warrior away. He crashed into the corner of the hall and vomited blood, dying on the spot. This rogue cultivator was only at level 8 Martial Master Realm. Even if he had a spiritual treasure in his hand, he was no match for him. It was no exaggeration to say that warriors below the half-step to Martial Spirit Realm were no match for Fei Ren. This kid is so strong. Seeing that Fei Ren had killed a level 8 Martial Master Realm rogue cultivator with one kick, the faces of the surrounding warriors changed slightly, and they all stopped what they were doing. After all, this rogue cultivator at level 8 Martial Master Realm was not weak among the warriors in the hall. However, Fei Ren, who was only at level 6 Martial Master Realm, could easily kill him with one kick. It was simply beyond their imagination. After killing this rogue cultivator, Fei Ren's hands did not slow down in the slightest. He continued to plunder the treasures around the hall, ignoring the shocked gazes of the surrounding people, as if he had ignored the killing and fighting at the side. Little bastard, stop it for me. After a few breaths, another furious voice came from the side. Then, a middle-aged man in a martial robe flew over. At the same time, he raised his hand and turned it into a claw. He grabbed Fei Ren's shoulder, intending to capture him alive. At the moment, there was fighting everywhere. Only Fei Ren was picking up treasures alone, which naturally attracted the attention of some people. Another one who wants to die? Glancing at the middle-aged man in a martial robe, Fei Ren's face was calm, but a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. The other party's origin power cultivation was only at level 10 Martial Master Realm. Although he was slightly stronger than the rogue cultivator from before, he could do nothing to him. Bang! In an instant, The middle-aged man in a martial robe clasped his hand on Fei Ren's shoulder. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not shake the other party at all. At this moment, Fei Ren's body was as unshakable as the 5 great mountains. What? The middle-aged man in a martial robe's face changed slightly. However, before he could react, Fei Ren's fist arrived in an instant. Ah! The middle-aged man in a martial robe let out a shrill scream. In the next moment, his chest was also pierced by Fei Ren's fist. He was killed on the spot, cleanly and cleanly. He died again. Seeing this scene, the surrounding martial artists also sucked in a breath of cold air, their expressions shocked. After all, the middle-aged man in a martial robe had origin power cultivation at level 10 Martial Master Realm. His strength was far stronger than the rogue cultivator from before. However, he was still not a match for Fei Ren and was killed on the spot with a single punch. After killing another person, Fei Ren's valiant strength also intimidated all the cultivators in the hall. This kid is too strong. I think his name is Fei Ren. Previously, Hormusi of the Dali tribe seemed to have died in his hands. For a moment, everyone had a lingering fear. At this moment, some of the rogue cultivators quietly retreated to the back of the hall, as if deliberately keeping a distance from Fei Ren. At the same time, they did not dare to stop him from plundering the treasures in the hall. Sure enough, the fist is the absolute truth. Seeing the actions of the surrounding warriors, Fei Ren understood and immediately sped up the speed of plundering the treasures. Chapter 466. After a while, the middle-grade spirit rings in Fei Ren's hands were filled to the brim and could no longer contain anything else. The harvest was huge. Moreover, Fei Ren had carefully selected the things in these spiritual rings. Most of them were medicinal herbs of the 5th grade and above, as well as magic nuclei of the spirit level and above. As for the other treasures and the low-grade primordial stones, he had discarded them all. Now, most of the primordial stones in his spirit ring were middle-grade primordial stones. The total number of primordial stones was hundreds of thousands. I've never been so generous in my entire life. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Fei Ren looked excited. Although he wanted to use the power of the Immortal refining cauldron to swallow and refine all the treasures in the spirit ring, there were too many people in the hall. He did not want to expose the secret of the Immortal refining cauldron, so he could only give up on this idea. I can't be greedy. Concentrating, Fei Ren looked at the hall again in the next moment. At this time, the battle in the hall was almost over. There were less than 100 warriors alive at the scene. Most of them were above the 10th level of the Martial Master Realm. The experts of the 5 tribes had also suffered heavy losses. It could be seen that most of the treasures at the scene had been plundered. Some of them were left on the ground. Only some low-grade primordial stones, demon cores, medicinal herbs, and sundries were left untouched. In addition, Indra, Du Qing, Hull, and the other higher-ups of the 5 tribes were nowhere to be seen. Indra, Hull, and the others are gone. There is no trace of the Great Elder and the others. It seems that the treasures here are not enough to attract their attention. The inheritance of the Martial King Realm Almighty should be somewhere else. Fei Ren was naturally aware of the disappearance of Indra and the others. However, through the sensing of primordial energy, he also knew that although Indra and the others had disappeared, they did not leave the Golden Hall in front of him. They were still lingering in a certain place in the hall. In addition, the Golden Hall, where everyone was not independent. It was separated by individual halls. The spacious hall under Fei Ren's feet was just one of them. Just one of the palaces contained such a large number of treasures. It was enough to show how powerful the desert dynasty under Azir's rule was. Is it there? Raising his head to look at the other side of the hall, Fei Ren fell into deep thought. There was a passageway there that seemed to lead to other halls. Shua! Without any hesitation, Fei Ren also flew into the depths of the hall. And after Fei Ren left, on the other side of the hall, Shua! Shun Linha also landed on the ground and escaped from the battle. At this moment, he was drenched in sweat and there were a few injuries on his left shoulder. Previously, the hall had fallen into a chaotic battle, and even he was no exception. He had also been besieged by several cultivators. However, his cultivation base had already reached the 10th level of the martial master realm. In addition, he had several high-level martial arts in his hands. Shenlinha had also successfully killed a few warriors who had besieged him and kept the treasures in his hands. It could be said that this trip was not in vain. Brother Fei's strength has become stronger again. Although my cultivation base has broken through to the 10th level of the martial master realm, the battle for the inheritance of the martial king realm will definitely be very fierce. Moreover, now that I've collected a lot of treasures and a few iron-eating beast eggs, it's time to stop. Glancing at the depths of the hall and the passageways that led to other halls, Shenlinha shook his head in the next moment. Then, he turned around and flew toward the entrance of the hall. He seemed to have some self-awareness and was unwilling to continue taking risks. Unlike Fei Run, Shenlinha was only a genius from a 7th-rank family in the Great Ming Dynasty. His strength was limited and could at most contend with a half-step to the martial spirit realm. Moreover, he did not have the backing of a 6th-rank sect like the Scorching Sun sect. He was not confident in the battle for the inheritance of the martial king realm. Therefore, seeing that Fei Run had chosen to continue deeper, Shenlinha did not follow. Instead, he stopped and left in time. Moreover, among the people present, except for a few rogue cultivators who continued to go deeper into the hall, most of the cultivators who had obtained benefits and treasures chose to leave and not go deeper into the hall. Obviously, they had the same thoughts and knew when to stop. At this moment, at a certain corner of the hall, as Fei Ren's figure flew towards the depths of the hall and finally disappeared, a gray-robed figure was faintly discernible. He had a gloomy expression, and shockingly, it was the dark corpse Taoist that had escaped from his hands back then. This little bastard is getting stronger and stronger. Looks like I have to think of a way to get rid of him as soon as possible. Looking in the direction that Fei Ren left, a trace of seriousness and fear flashed in the dark corpse Taoist's eyes. Along the way, other than collecting treasures, he had been quietly following the other party, waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. However, the dark corpse Taoist had seen Fei Ren's powerful strength. With his current ability, he was definitely not a match for Fei Ren in a one-on-one fight, even if he had a few mummified corpses to help him. Therefore, in order to take revenge, the dark corpse Taoist had to find another way. Otherwise, with his strength alone, he would not be able to kill Fei Ren. Instead, he would be courting death. Chua! His figure turned into a gray shadow, and in the next moment, the dark corpse Taoist also followed closely behind, disappearing into the depths of the hall. Somewhere in the Golden Hala, few minutes later, Fei Ren finally arrived at the end of the passageway. At this moment, what appeared before his eyes was an unfamiliar and spacious hall. The surroundings were decorated with gorgeous decorations, and the floor was covered with rare diamond mines. At the end of the hall, a golden throne appeared. On the left and right sides of the golden throne, there were 2 tall statues of the Golden Crow. At this moment, they were lifelike, as if they were symbolizing the illustrious reputation of the Desert Dynasty. This is the main hall of the palace? Seeing this, Fei Ren's eyes were slightly surprised. Not only was the hall in front of him luxuriously decorated, but it was also different from the other halls. Not only was the area larger, but there was also a golden throne in the middle of the hall. In the ancient Desert Dynasty, only the emperor would have a throne. Surprisingly, the hall in front of him was the main hall of the palace ruins. At the same time, it was also the place where Azir most likely left his inheritance. At the same time, Indra, Duqing, Coke, and the others, who did not appear before, were also in the hall at this moment, each occupying a territory. Although there was no specific action, it could be seen from the tense atmosphere that everyone was covetously eyeing the treasures in the main hall. In front of the Polo tribe team, Indra also narrowed his eyes and showed some surprise when he saw Fei Ren appear in the main hall. I didn't expect this kid to be able to break into the main hall alone without the help of Zhang Han and the other old guys. Chapter 467. On the other side, in front of the Shuchuo tribe's team, this kid is really lucky. He didn't die, seeing that Fei Run didn't die in the chaotic battle in the main hall and managed to charge into the main hall alone. The azure-robed elder beside Zhang Han narrowed his eyes slightly, and a hint of regret flashed across his face. As the second elder of the Shuchuo tribe, the green-robed elder was a stubborn person. He had always maintained a hostile attitude towards the martial artists of the outside world. Unlike Zhang Han and the others, he naturally didn't have a good impression of Fei Run, a disciple of the Scorching Sun sect. Senior Great Elder, Fei Rin swept his gaze and found the position of Zhang Han and the others. In the next moment, he also leaped and arrived in front of them. There were many experts in the main hall. Other than the people from the 5 major tribes, there were also many martial artists from the outside world. There were many half-step to martial spirit realm experts and even true martial spirit realm experts. Their numbers took up more than half of the main hall, and there were about 100 people. Among these people, the weakest was a LV9 martial master. It would be difficult for them to survive alone. In addition, Fei Rin had killed Huamuzi of the Dali tribe, which caused the other 3 tribes to be disgusted. Therefore, Fei Rin needed to join forces with Zhang Han and the others of the Shuchuo tribe to avoid being targeted by the other 3 tribes. Fei Rin, kid, you're not too late. Glancing at Fei Run, who had rushed over, Zhang Han nodded and said with a sigh. He had always seen the growth of Fei Rin's strength. When the ancestral mausoleum was first opened, Fei Rin was only a LV2 martial master. However, in just half a month, Fei Rin's Yuan Qi cultivation had increased by leaps and bounds, and he had stepped into LV6 martial master. If this is where Azir was buried, then the inheritance he left behind is very likely to be here. Fei Rin nodded as Zhang Han's voice fell. Although he had plundered many treasures along the way, and his spiritual ring was filled to the brim, these treasures were not worth mentioning compared to the inheritance left behind by Azir, a martial king realm almighty. That may be the case, but apart from the golden throne and the 2 golden crow totems, there is no sign of any treasure or inheritance in the main hall. It is extremely strange. Earlier, this old man had already used his essence energy to investigate. There are no special secret rooms or secret passages under the main palace. At the same time, this place is sealed off. If there really are treasures, they would not be able to escape from everyone's eyes. Kublai stroked his long beard as he said calmly, I see. Speaking up to this point, Fei Rin more or less understood why no one was fighting. It turned out that the treasures of the main hall had yet to appear. Everyone, the treasure has yet to appear. It's not a good idea for us to stare at each other here. At this moment, Yin Chualuo's gaze swept across the surroundings. In the next moment, Yin Chualuo also opened his mouth and suggested. Now that they had finally entered the main palace of the palace ruins, the inheritance of the treasure from 10,000 years ago was right in front of them. Naturally, they would not be willing to return empty-handed. Moreover, the Paluo tribe had also lost many people in this trip to the ancestral mausoleum. Now, other than Yin Chualuo, who was at level 1 martial spirit realm, there were only a few dozen experts left in the tribe, and most of them were injured. Chief Yin Chualuo, may I ask what you have up your sleeve? As the voice fell, not far away from the main palace, a white-haired old man grinned and replied calmly. The white-haired old man was tall and burly. At this moment, he was carrying a long sword on his back. His entire body was emitting a powerful essence energy fluctuation, vaguely forming an aura of his own. His essence energy cultivation had reached the martial spirit realm, and he was not any weaker than Yin Chualuo. Beside the white-haired old man, there were also several martial master experts who were not weak. All of them were at level 9 martial master and above. It's the city lord of Qingfeng City, Lu Qingfeng. At this moment, a low exclamation came from the crowd. Someone seemed to have recognized the white-haired old man's origin and was surprised. "He is Lu Qingfeng." At the side, Feiren looked at the white-haired old man not far away, and he was also slightly surprised. He had heard about the old man's reputation. Just like Black Rock City, Qingfeng City was also an important city in the Great Ming Dynasty. However, Qingfeng City was dominated by the city governor's mansion. The city governor, Lu Qingfeng, was a veteran expert at LV1 martial spirit realm. He was good at swordsmanship and had extraordinary strength. It's simple. Other than the golden throne, there are only 2 golden crow totems here. The treasure must be related to these things. We just need to send a few people to check it out. Yin Shuoyuo raised his finger and pointed at the throne and the golden crow totems in the middle of the main palace, and said coldly. However, before his voice fell, Du Qing, who was at the side, said in a playful tone, "Yin Shuoyuo, don't tell me you want us to be cannon fodder. If it's like what happened outside the palace and we accidentally touched some forbidden formation, our lives will be in danger." Clan leader Du Qing is right. Lu Qingfeng, who was not far away, also nodded. As the city lord of Qingfeng City, not only was he powerful, but he was also astute. He also knew the tricks and risks. Haha, if we continue to stand here, the treasure will never appear. Yin Shuoyuo ignored the doubts of the two and said slowly, Du Qing and Lu Qingfeng's faces turned serious, and then they stopped talking. They seemed to have wavered a little. At the same time, other than the Shadi tribe behind Du Qing and the experts of Qingfeng City under Lu Qingfeng, the rest of the rogue cultivators in the main palace were also a little tempted. After all, it was not easy for them to get out of the encirclement and come to the main palace. Naturally, they would not be willing to return empty-handed. Clan leader, what do we say? At this time, seeing that the people in the main palace were a little restless, an expert of the Bardshi tribe stepped forward and looked at Hull. Although Yin Shuoyuo's suggestion was a little risky, it was the truth. Wealth comes from danger. What about Jinsha? With a solemn face, Hull did not immediately respond to the reminder of the Bardshi tribe's expert. Instead, he asked, after a series of chaotic battles, he had led a group of experts into the main palace of the palace ruins. However, there was still no news of his eldest son, Jinsha, which made Hull a little suspicious. Reporting to clan leader, there is no news of the young clan leader so far. Facing Hull's inquiry, the Bardshi tribe expert did not dare to be negligent and answered in fear and trepidation. What? Hearing this, Hull's face turned a little ugly. After all, Jinsha was his eldest son, and he had poured countless resources and effort into the Bardshi tribe. If something happened to him, it would be a huge blow to the Bardshi tribe. Tribe leader, in this subordinate's opinion, the young tribe leader might have been delayed and will rush over in a while. Currently, the people from the Dali tribe have also not arrived at the main hall. Another expert from the Bardshi tribe hurriedly stepped forward and explained when he saw Koch's faint signs of anger. Yin Shuoyuo is also an old fox. We can't be careless. Seeing this, Hull did not ask any more questions. He seemed to feel that it made sense. Then, he looked at the throne and the golden crow totem in the center of the main palace. However, at this moment, Hull and the experts of the Bardshi tribe did not know that Jinsha had already died in the hands of Guansheng of the Heavenly Dragon sect. As for the people of the Dali tribe, they would never be able to come to the main palace. They were all dead under Fei Ren's halberd. Chapter 468. At this moment, in front of the Qingfeng City team, City Lord, should we make a move? A young warrior holding a broadsword stepped forward and whispered in Lu Qingfeng's ear. His gaze was fixed on Lu Qingfeng, who was beside him. The young warrior's cultivation was not low. He had already reached the 10th level of the martial master realm. Even in the 5 major tribes, he was an expert. In his opinion, although Indra's words were not without reason, the other party was still from the 5 major tribes and could not be trusted easily. Of course, you will make a move later. Glancing at the young warrior beside him, Lu Qingfeng's expression was cold as he said lightly, "As the city lord of the Qingfeng city and a martial spirit realm expert, he naturally could not be the cannon fodder." "Yes, city lord." Hearing this, the young warrior's face froze, and he quickly cupped his hands. Although he knew that there were some risks, he did not dare to disobey the city lord's orders. After a while, other than the people from the Qingfeng city, the 5 major tribes also sent out a few experts. In addition to the rogue cultivators who were ready to make a move, they quickly gathered a team of more than 20 people. Most of them were experts from the 5 major tribes. Only a few bold rogue cultivators were willing to go forward and check it out. "Let's do it together." At the front of the team, a Paluo tribe expert had a solemn expression. In the next moment, he raised his hand and blasted out a dark yuan power pillar towards the throne and the golden crow totem not far away. Swish! Rumble! After that, everyone also launched their attacks. Countless yuan power attacks swept out and also attacked the throne and the golden crow totem in the center of the hall. For a moment, the power was vast. Gotcha! Boom! In merely a few breaths of time, the throne at the center of the hall was unable to bear the heavy burden under the powerful yuan power attacks of everyone. It actually cracked open on the spot like a spider web. In the next moment, it completely exploded and turned into golden powder on the ground. At the same time, the golden crow totem on both sides of the throne was also affected by the aftershock. At this moment, it was trembling and on the verge of collapse, as if it could collapse at any time. Moreover, the golden crow engraved on it also shattered. As for the treasure left behind by the Martial King realm expert that everyone was most concerned about, it still had not appeared. Could it be that the treasure is not in the main hall? Upon seeing this scene, Fei Rin's eyes also narrowed slightly, a surprised expression on his face. At first, his guess was similar to Indra's. He also thought that the treasure was related to the throne in the center of the hall and the golden crow totem. But now, it seemed that this was not the case. "Look, what is that?" Just as Fei Rin was puzzled, a cry of surprise suddenly came from the side. "This is the golden crow." Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. In the next moment, they were all shocked. They couldn't help but hold their breaths. The scene was deathly silent. At the top of the hall, a dazzling golden crow shadow appeared out of thin air, filled with powerful mana fluctuations. At this moment, the light was dazzling, as if the legendary golden crow had descended to the world, intimidating the heavens. The golden crow's silhouette, I was right. His Majesty Azir's legacy is here. In front of the Paluo tribe's troops, Indra's face was filled with shock. In the next moment, a trace of excitement and passion flashed through his eyes as he clenched his fists. Although it is only a golden crow's silhouette, this momentum is still very shocking. The totem has shown its spirit. It seems that the treasure of the Martial King realm is about to appear. On the other side, Du Qing, Coke, Lu Qingfeng, and the others all had different expressions. For the moment of the treasure's appearance, not only them, but everyone present had been waiting for a long time. Roar! Just as everyone had their own ulterior motives and were about to make a move, the golden crow's silhouette above the hall roared in the next moment, and its aura grew even stronger. At the same time, an extremely powerful soul aura spread out in all directions. A powerful soul aura and mana fluctuations. Could it be that this golden crow is about to be resurrected? Facing the change of the golden crow's silhouette, Fei Rin also had a bad feeling in his heart. His eyes revealed a trace of uneasiness. The golden crow's silhouette in front of him had an extremely powerful mana fluctuation. It had already stepped into the realm of a low, earth rank magical beast. It was comparable to a level 3 martial spirit realm human warrior. Moreover, the golden crow was an ancient spiritual beast. It had a trace of innate bloodline, and its strength was stronger than a human warrior of the same rank. Once the golden crow in the hall was successfully resurrected, not to mention whether or not they could obtain the treasure left behind by the Martial King realm, everyone present would be in danger of losing their lives. A low-earth rank golden crow with innate bloodline power was not something an ordinary martial spirit realm warrior could contend against. At the very least, no one present was a match for it. They would only have a chance if they joined forces. Rumble. Suddenly, under everyone's shocked gazes, the golden crow's silhouette broke through the restraints of the hall. Its beastly body soared into the sky. Then, the golden light around its body became more and more condensed. A large amount of soul, aura, and mana fluctuations fused and intertwined together. Finally, it was resurrected into a real golden crow, a low earth rank magical beast. This golden crow has been resurrected. Below the ground, an expert of the Shadi tribe had a shocked expression as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at the golden crow in the sky. This is going to be troublesome. Looking at the sky as well, Fei Rin's expression was solemn. If he was not mistaken, the resurrected golden crow in front of him was the guardian spirit beast responsible for guarding the treasure left behind by Azir. As for the joint attack from before, it was like the key to Pandora's box, causing it to unexpectedly resurrect and reappear in the world. Rumble, rumble. At the same time, due to the reappearance of the golden crow, the main hall that everyone was in began to gradually collapse. It was on the verge of collapse. Bricks and tiles fell one after another, and countless huge pillars collapsed. It was as if the hall would turn into ruins in the next moment and be completely buried in the depths of the earth. Damn it! Retreat! Raising his eyes and looking around, Indra also gritted his teeth in the next moment. He then took the lead and flew out of the hall. As the chief of the Paluo tribe, he naturally knew the terrifying strength of the golden crow in the sky. Although he was also a level 1 martial spirit realm expert, he was no match for the golden crow. Even if he had the support of the Paluo tribe's experts, it would still be useless. The resurrected golden crow in the sky was a true low earth rank magical beast. At the same time, it had a trace of innate bloodline. Its sharp claws could instantly tear a level 1 martial spirit realm expert into pieces and then devour him into its stomach. Including the people from the 5 major tribes, none of the warriors present was a match for the golden crow in front of them. If they were to fight it head-on, they would only be courting death. City Lord, the golden crow has been resurrected. What should we do? On the other side, an expert of the Windy City was also shocked. He then looked at Lu Qingfeng in front of him, as if he was waiting for his response. After all, he was the City Lord of the Windy City. At the same time, he was also one of the few martial spirit realm experts present. If Lu Qingfeng in front of him was to intervene, he might be able to slightly block the attack of the golden crow in the sky. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.